Hasan brings up that a lot of these people, one person in particular, loves saying the N-word. Jordan Peterson and Destiny that took place a month or so ago. I was way more sympathetic with Destiny than I was with Jordan Peterson, but
crazy. When I was arguing against the right, all of a sudden I'm like reasonable, rational, logical. But now when I argue against the left, oh, well, now he's
I'm the director at Wisecrack, former award-winning debater and professional debate coach. I was a top 10 high school debater for my junior and senior years of high school, and then I was the debate coach.
Do you think that Joe Rogan hasn't influenced people to vote in a particular way or take stances on particular topics?
Well, I think so. Joe Rogan's actually a really interesting example. I like talking about Joe Rogan. Like,
that's why I'm asking you if you said this thing, and you're saying, well, maybe I did. How do you not remember? This video was yesterday. Hasan spent an hour hate watching Wisecrack, hate watching you.
Henry, I'm curious. Your initial reaction to, I guess,
Streamed 1 day ago.
Hasan Piker's comments and then Destiny's reaction.
Why was was he listening to it at double speed or like 1.5 speed? Like
He was, yeah.
Yeah. It's just, what does he need it to match his own like pace and tone as far as like rushing through and speeding through? This whole thing.
I don't understand. I don't know if it's like an anti-intellectual thing or if it's a genuinely can't understand me thing. I don't think I've ever been in a debate where somebody's like, I'm sorry, I didn't understand you. Can you slow down? The fast talking thing is just such a weird, it's just such a weird insult. Or is it even an insult? I don't know if it's anti-intellectual or if it's just like a random insult on like my speaking cadence. Or I don't know. I have no idea. It's so weird.
Thing's just extremely weird and cringe to me because he's very fixated on like, but like the whole point is I'm right. And then he starts getting mad about like all the price tags on Hasan's things. And I don't know. I don't believe Destiny really has any first principles and he's pretty narcissistic. So
like, I write so much. I write so much stuff. Like none of this, like there's plenty in here to criticize if you want. What I actually think, I just don't know why. Like, why not just not talk about me? I feel like it'd be so easy to just not talk about me. Like, what do these guys even do? What is this channel?
This video is
Taylor Swift and the American propaganda. Oh boy. Never mind. Okay. This is why they talk about me. Because they pretend to do political content. I shouldn't say that. Actually, now I'm talking. I don't actually know. Maybe their political content is good. I actually don't know. Well, but that's the difference between me and them. I'll give them credit to say I don't know rather than just like jumping to conclusions. But yeah, I don't know.
but this was like, Jesus, I expected this, but just to hear it and see it, like, ouch.
Yeah, it's interesting that Destiny makes this connection between...
On a scale of 1 to 10, how informed about USA current events would you say you are right now? Current events? Probably like a 2 to 4. Depends on what event you're talking about. I haven't read much domestic stuff recently, almost at all. But it also feels like there's not much happening that people are talking about right now because of the candidates at play. Where are we at with like Trump's ongoing court case? Is that still like a thing that's happening? Oh my God, I just pushed a bunch of buttons. Trump's court case. Is it unintellectual if they honestly can't keep up with your speaking voice? Is it your honest opinion if they can't keep up with your speaking pace that they are signaling their intelligence level? No. When you say, are you being anti-intellectual, the implication is that you're shitting on somebody for being like intellectually educated. It's like when a conservative is like, oh, I don't trust anything that comes from a college. That's like anti-intellectual, right? When somebody like makes fun of me for speaking fast, I genuinely don't know. I don't know if it's just like a random insult. Because like I said, I don't think anybody's had a problem understanding me. I've never been in a debate before, I don't think, where somebody's like, can you please slow down? Or this might have happened one time. But it might have been with an ESL person. Yeah. I don't know if that's I don't know if Trump should have taken the stand or not. Isn't he using kind of would you call it an affirmative defense? If I'm accusing you of committing a crime with how you've written your numbers down, but you say, well, I wrote the numbers down that way, but it wasn't in a criminal manner. I don't know if you'd say that's an affirmative defense or not. I don't think you would because the underlying issue isn't actually a crime, right? I don't know. Don't care. Yeah, I'd say 2 to a 4. I don't know much domestically right now.
Debate and interesting that Destiny makes this connection between debate and, you know, like, I think he said like the Federalist Papers, and he talked about Congress and government and the way in which debate leads to direct politics and forms
Yes.
of activism.
Yeah, he's equating what he's doing with like the writing of the Federalist Papers, but like the Federalist Papers were written by people who were like participants in government at.
Okay, I cannot tell if this is legitimately, I'm not trying to be an insulting person. I really don't know if this is a 75, 80 IQ thing or not. I super cannot tell. I don't know if people who can't understand a comparison are genuinely mentally handicapped or not. I don't know if this is an area where you're so mindful by your hatred of a particular person that you are that it's like inhibiting your ability to exercise any logical thought, or if these people are genuinely like down there in the like the army can't find a job for you because you're actually too mentally handicapped area. Like, what's your favorite sport? I really like playing basketball. I think basketball is sick. It's my favorite sport, you know, like, yeah, like you're like Kobe and Shaq and stuff. You think that you're just like them? You think you're just like Kobe and Shaq? What? You think you're as good as like, no, what? What do you, no, what? Because you rarely ascribe maliciousness to people. They know it. Yeah, but like this level of maliciousness is not even malicious. It's so stupid. Why is political debate, like political debate sucks? No, why would you say political debate doesn't mean anything? Like, and an example would be like the Federalist Papers. Like in the beginning of the United States, at least my understanding is that there was a whole bunch of persuasion that had to happen for the American population to form a federal government. And part of that, I believe, was the Federalist Papers, right? Was a whole bunch of essays and, I don't know if there were pamphlets for the Federalist Papers. It was just like essays and writings and shit from our wonderful founding fathers and other politicians or whatever, to try to convince Americans that like, look, we need a federal government. That's political debate. And then it's like, wait, you think you're like Alexander Hamilton? No. What? No, that's no part of what I said was saying that. There isn't a single word that I said that would point you in the direction of me thinking like, yeah, I do think I'm like the governor or pre-US like founding father, like
And forms
Yes.
of activism.
Yeah, he's equating what he's doing with like the writing of the Federalist Papers.
Notice how they never attack your points, but attack the version of you they make in their heads. Yeah.
But like the Federalist Papers were written by people who were like participants in government at.
Like, even the point he's making isn't good here. The Federalist Papers were written by people that were participants in government. So what? Can only people in government participate in political debate, or like it's not even it's
the time, like who are also like actually acting on enacting legislation or like writing the law. It wasn't like on the internet you can be this hyper removed voyeur to the whole process and just be arguing from afar. Like it's a completely different like technological context.
So you think are all activists not engaging in any form of political persuasion? If an activist isn't a government official, like what are you guys doing right now? Like it's such a stupid point. Like you could there are criticisms that you can even make. Not all authors of the Federalist Papers were in government, as far as I know. Actually, I don't know. I'd rather. It wouldn't surprise me if not all of them were, but I'm not going to make that strong claim and be wrong. But
than when like pamphlets were the main way information was spread.
Yeah.
Pamphlets were the main way information. A completely different like technological context than when like pamphlets were the main way information was spread.
Like, what are we even saying here? What is this garbage jumble of words? Like, it's a totally different technological context than when pamphlets were spread. Yeah, we have more technology now than we did 300 years ago. Like, what is the point of? What is the point? What does that statement mean?
Yeah, and I do think as well that there's.
Yeah, true. They actually didn't have AOL Online back then.
I mean, there's a pretty marked difference between streamers debating, and I'm just repeating, what Henry just said,
Yeah.
And politicians sitting in a room hashing out ideas as they...
That wasn't what the Federalist Papers are or were. They weren't for politicians to just write things to each other in a fucking room. Maybe I don't know what the fucking Federalist Papers are. I'm sorry. Listen, my history is real bad if I haven't gone in depth on it. I thought the Federalist Papers were a bunch of essays that were written by founding father type people and government people and non-government people, basically in an attempt to persuade the United States republic. No, we weren't a republic. To persuade the 13 colonies, like, hey guys, listen, we really need a federal government. Stop being 13 colonies. We really need a federal government. It's really important to have a federal government, and we promise if you do this, we will protect your freedoms. I thought that was what the Federalist Papers were. They're not meant to convince. Well, I don't know if you say they're meant to convince all the public, but probably like the landowners or the people that be voting or whatever. That was my understanding, but I could be totally wrong. Who knows? A collection of 85 articles and essays written by Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay under the collective pseudonym Publius. Nice, edgy. To promote the ratification of the Constitution of the United States. The collection. Who are these aimed at? They were published serially in the Independent Journal, the New York Packet, and the Daily Advertiser between 1787 and 1788, between October and April. A compilation of these 77 essays and 8 others were published in 2 volumes. Okay, the authors of the Federalist intended to influence the voters to ratify the Constitution. In Federalist number 1, they explicitly set that debate in broad political terms. It has been frequently remarked that it seems to have been reserved to the people of this country by their conduct and example to decide the important question whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident and force, except in the case of live streamers having debates. Oh, fuck. I didn't know about the last clause. Okay. Never mind. He is right. My bad. I thought I was 100% completely correct and he was a total dipshit until the last 8 words. My bad.
And I do think as well that there's a pretty marked difference between streamers debating, and I'm just repeating, what Henry just said, and politicians sitting in a room hashing out ideas as they form the underlying logic of a government or a political philosophy,
Like that's not even what these were. Oh. Okay. Like, so he doesn't understand what I said. He doesn't understand what a comparison is. He doesn't know what the Federalist Papers are. But man, I bet they're about to make a whole bunch of pointed criticisms about me.
Oh, and I don't doubt that when, for example, when Marx and Engels were sitting around, or when they were sitting around.
Oh man, but we know our left
with
God.
Workers in pubs in London talking about ideas. I'm sure that debate happened, but I think there's maybe a difference in what they're talking about here. But
what do you think? Am I wrong? Hold on. I need to stop saying am I wrong? I need to stop guessing myself so much because these guys are actually fucking retarded. Wasn't the Communist Manifesto literally like a made for dipshits like book pamphlet that you could hand out to people? It's like, hey, listen, even if you're like an ordinary worker who can barely fucking read, look, you will understand this. Isn't this what the whole point of this was? The Manifesto of the Communist Party is a political pamphlet written by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, the 2 guys you just brought up, by the way. Commissioned by the Communist League and originally published in London in 1848, the text is the first and most systematic attempt by Marx and Engels to codify for wide consumption, the historical materialist idea that the history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles, in which social classes are defined by the relationship of people to the means of production. I think this was aimed at like ordinary. I mean, it says it for wide consumption. It's aimed at ordinary people. So, okay.
But I think there's maybe a difference in what they're talking about here. But to be, we want to be fair.
Okay. They're funny at least.
Want to be balanced, want to be grounded. Fun GPT brings up founding fathers, finding the 14 fathers. For anyone who doesn't regularly listen to this show, just so you know, it's canon that I have...
Oh, wait. Is this fucking retard watching my stream right now? Watching the popular debater... Oh, and I'm Voldemort again. He can't say my fucking name. Tell a black woman Nice. Why rap music is alienating for white people, and it's unfair that white people are unable to use the N-word. Pure insanity, and can't believe this person is treated as intelligent. Is that this guy? Hey, listen, if you want to chat about anything, any of this, or the fucking video we're watching here, anything I just talked about, yeah, feel free to hop on.
14 dads. But we'll take a look at
Dumb question. In what context is it fairer to attack critical differences between two elements in a comparison if this instance is a poor one? The point of a comparison is to take two dissimilar things and to compare a similar quality, basically. It's not to draw a one-to-one parallel between those two things. You're usually comparing and contrasting, right? You're comparing like these are how they're similar, these are how they're different, right? So if you take, but a comparison fails when the similar part isn't meaningfully connected between the two things. I'm trying to think of an example. So like I might say, when I say, oh, look, political debate is important, I do political debate, and I think it's important. And look, the founding fathers did political debate, and they would say it's important, right? Now, the similarity there is that, look, we both do political debate, and the dissimilarity there is that, like, look, I do it now on the internet, they did it then in pamphlets, right? And the point of the argument is to show that, like, this similar thing, or this thing that I think is important, look, other people in other circumstances have done it, right? Now, a dissimilar thing would be when the similar thing that you're comparing, either the comparison isn't accurate, like it's not a similar thing, or there's something else that's breaking the comparison to make it disanalogous, meaning it doesn't work. So, for instance, if I say like, oh, I think that, like one example might be, I think political debate is important because political debate is how we defeated the Nazis. Somebody might say, well, hold on, that's not how we defeated the Nazis. Oh, the comparison doesn't work, so it's broken, right? Or I might say, political debate is really important because it helps to change minds. For instance, when the Jews debated against the Nazis, I debate against Nazis. That might not work because somebody said, okay, well, hold on, you did both debate, but like debating didn't help the Jews, right? You said that debating helped, and you drew a comparison between you and another group of people who debated, but it didn't help them. So then it doesn't work there. These would be two examples of like comparisons that don't work, right?
The 14 dads. But we'll take a look at the interview itself, where these comments come from. I'm going to fast forward to the 30-minute mark, and I have the transcript pulled up as well. So I think you said, Henry, around 30 minutes is when they start talking about the drama.
The difference they are alleging is in the intent behind the debates. Yeah, but like, remember, so this is like the boring thing, okay? This is also why I try not to ever accuse people of like grifting or whatever, because that's boring to me as well, right? Okay, I'm going to repeat this a billion times. If you take anything from me, okay, take this. When you have cognitive dissonance, you observe something and it's different than what's in your head, you can either change your mind to fit reality or you can change reality to fit your mind, okay? The irritating thing I deal with all the time is I am the least, like, mysterious person on the entire fucking internet. I've probably written more about my positions. I've had more broadcasted content. I've published more YouTube videos. I've been involved in more tweets. Like, there's nothing murky or confusing about my positions. Insofar, like, they might be contradictory or dumb sometimes, but like, they're not like, what does he mean when he says this? Like, what did he mean? What does Destiny really think? Like, it's all out there. It's pretty open. So you can literally hop on my stream and fucking debate me about it. Like, I'm one of the most accessible people at my level of fame on the internet, like, easily. So if you want to debate like the intent of my debates, the boring thing, and I'm guessing it's going to happen here, it happens with us, it happens with everybody, nobody actually takes me at my word for anything I say. Instead, they fabricate. They're like, okay, Destiny says that he debates because he wants to change people's minds and have them adopt. No, okay, that's bullshit. Okay, so he debates because he's a cuck. He debates because he likes to be right. He debates because he's a grifter and he gets money for it. And he debates because he's racist. It's like, okay, now let's work on these terms. So now I'm going to show you all the ways that he's racist and why debating when just for racism is a bad way to debate. You shouldn't be debate just because you're racist, right? So instead of like ever taking me at my word and then levying what could be, by the way, good criticisms, because I'm not beyond reproach. There's plenty of criticisms that you can levy to me. But instead, all the criticisms that they levy are towards this imaginary straw man, like racist, bigot debater who just runs around screaming the N-word all day and is grifting and is paid by Israel and Soros and the Mossad and the State Department. And yeah, but it's like so boring. It's like, okay, well, let's see you beat up on this like imaginary Destiny straw man, I guess. Yeah.
transcript pulled up as well. So I think you said, Henry, around 30 minutes is when they start talking about the drama stuff. Great. Now, this is a interview from a Wired podcast with Hasan Piker and McKenna Kelly and Leah Feiger. Fun fact, Leah Feiger is my cousin-in-law. You know, I want to give credit where credit is due.
One of the girls interviewing Hasan on this? That's so not surprising. Okay.
I do have, okay, I was just given Leah Feiger's number. Probably won't be able to get her on right now.
Oh, wait, hold on. Also, wait a second. He said the thing. You guys said nobody said that. He said, did he say cousin-in-law? You guys said nobody says like aunt or uncle-in-law or whatever. He just said cousin-in-law. Fuck you guys.
But maybe in the future, we'll see if Leah Feiger from Wired will come on and talk to us. So hopefully this is about the point where I have it pulled up here. So it was a wide-ranging interview. It's from their politics.
Hold on. Wait, what the fuck? This can't be real. Hold on. I'm so sorry. Wait, 17 minutes ago. I love how anytime anyone criticizes Destiny, it is never about the actual points he makes. I've yet to see any substantive criticism. Well, this stream wasn't about Destiny. It was about the purpose and philosophy of debate. But if you need a criticism of a point he made, today on stream, he said that rap music is alienating for white people because artists use the N-word and white people can't say that word. That is an absurd point to make, which obscures the history of slavery and racism more broadly. Do you think he uses imperialism or colonialism in all of this explanation? The history of oppressive language being reappropriated by oppressed groups and the way in which art is often reflective of specific communities. Wouldn't it be wild if I've had like conversations pointing out these literal exact things before? This little bro is making comments on his YouTube channel replies that have just recently been posted about a stream that he just watched of mine 40 minutes ago. What the fuck? And that's all to say nothing of the basic principles of human empathy would lead many to believe that if an oppressed group says, hey, we actually don't want you to use a word that way, we actually don't want you to use a word that was used to perpetuate violence against us, thanks, and then you just say, oh, okay, my bad. But the whole thing indicates a lack of understanding of the cultural function of language, the history of oppression, and the social and political use of art. My God.
The reason why I'm trying to grow always isn't necessarily because like I'm on my Sigma grind shit. I'm always trying to fucking max out on my revenue. I'm rev maxing. Like, no, it's also because like I wanna bring awareness to certain causes and try to instill some charitability in a broader audience. That,
I mean, that's like an interesting idea there. We'll keep going, but the idea that Hasan Piker is saying that he instrumentalizes both drama and the desire for consuming content around drama to bring people into broader conversations they might not be privy to otherwise. That sounds fair.
But is that true? What drama does Hasan instrumentalize? And it's funny, not to jerk myself, but like, this is literally what I do, right? This is like the back and forth of like, yeah, we'll have on the Lav and Mr. Girls, and then we'll read books. Or like, yeah, we'll do like the crazy fucking Orbital Wars, and then we'll read like a UN report. Or yeah, we'll do like this is like my content style. Like, is he going to say next, like Hasan paved in his own? The only drama Hasan gets involved in is when he's dragged into fucking drama because he's getting called out on something.
You know,
Isn't it so funny how people take Hasan at face value when he's lying, but you get second guessed and have your points misrepresented all the time? Yeah, seriously. Like, I like how Hasan literally could have just said anything here, and the guys been like, yeah, that's true. Like, yeah, actually, actually, that's really he instrumentalizes.
I'm not mad at that. We'll keep watching. Like it if you're here.
will then listen to what I have to say on certain issues instead of going, oh, I hate that guy. That guy's like a socialist with a nice car. Fuck that guy.
So turning these like
God, the cringe voice, dude. If I ever talk like this, hey, I'm Destiny doing the podcast today, guys. Yeah, what are we talking about? Oh my God. Got any advice for combating cognitive dissonance? Friend wants me to say IP is a genocide, but every time I show stats and Israeli efforts, they'll seemingly ignore it and come back with more quotes plus anecdotes. You know what? That would be a good article to write. Hold on. Or a good thing to write on. All right. On each of these like things, I'll write like a counter or how to prevent or hopefully safeguard yourself from it. Yeah.
dramatic moments and
Yeah.
like beefs with other creators into teaching moments for your audience.
I try to, yeah. Like the last round of this was like so laughable to have this conversation and like with adults, but
Are we bringing up Destiny? Is that what
yeah, I was about to say like
Yeah,
And I just want to note the name Destiny was said by a host of a podcast that we are listening to. That's who brought
I wasn't going to name names.
yeah, no, there's a content creator who like loves debating, doesn't really care about any of the things that he debates about, but like he will assume like ridiculous stances, ridiculous positions. He's relatively skilled in rhetoric, not
Ridiculous positions, ridiculous, like, yeah, okay.
necessarily very knowledgeable on the issues, but rhetoric goes a very long way in debates. But beyond that, this dude is very edgy. Loves saying gamer words, the N-word specifically.
Okay, so let's pause there for a
Like,
second.
this funny thing, too, is how much of an... Like, that's not even really what I'm known for in wider political spaces. Unless you're like Hasan, right? Like, people that are inviting me on, like, fucking Breaking Points or, like, Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson are like, oh, yeah, we're going to get Destiny on because he's, like, the N-word slur sayer guy. Like, that. These are just, like... These are, like, caricatures of me that have been created by these, like, crazy online lefties. Are like, oh, yeah, Destiny, prolific N-word. You like, yeah, okay, dude.
Second, so...
Why do they all have so much trouble saying your
Hasan just
name? Everyone knows who they're talking about, but they avoid it so much. I don't know. Maybe because they know they're full of shit. I'm not sure. Why not just say, like, I don't really talk about Destiny. I don't want to talk about that.
Okay, so let's pause there for a second. So,
What stops you from hosting debates where you can, in real time, vet claims and sources of opposition, forcing them to engage when they normally wouldn't? You play in the other side's arena, why not your own? Because I don't think anybody would come on to those types of conversations. Honest question, how are we supposed to reach the truth without debate and conversation? Do we need some dialectical method? What is the alternative method these types of people offer? I've never gotten a good answer. They don't believe in debate because they want to kill people that disagree with them. I'm not joking. That is like the lefty. That's why Hasan said re-education camps. That's why non-compete said re-education camps. That's why lefties had re-education camps and gulags.
If you're in a socialist country with multiple parties, and one of the parties is a capitalist party, what would you do if that party started gaining momentum?
Oh my God, Ethan is asking such a question. You murder them all! Say it! You kill them all!
Kill those motherfuckers in a video game. Sorry. Holy murder those motherfuckers in the street. Let the streets soak in their fucking red capitalist bloods.
That's what Mao did. That's what they did after the Bolshevik Revolution to other lefties.
The solution to that would always be education and
Re-education camps.
offering more
Re-education?
Destiny may be the enemy of our enemies in the sense that he regularly pwns fascists on Twitch debates, but that does not make him our friend. You see, we are the enemy of liberals.
Watch it.
Wait, the concentration camp or the socialist liberal one?
The re-education. That some of our comrades are going to have to be re-educated permanently.
How we deal with former capitalists, fascists, and other such oppressors will be one of the great tests of anarchist society. Great care must be taken to treat them compassionately and humanely, giving them every opportunity to join our society as active and productive comrades, starting by treating them like any other comrade with special circumstances. Rather than ship deposed class enemies off to inhumane gulags or otherwise seek out revenge, they should be placed in reform centers where they are able to live in comfort and benefit from counseling and education, teaching them about the benefits of our new society. Some may never be willing to give up their abuses, and these die-hard oppressors would need to be secluded, perhaps indefinitely. But capitalists and reactionaries who demonstrate a willingness to re-enter society on equal footing should be given every opportunity to learn, grow, and eventually rejoin our community in peace. Chapter 9, the military.
This is the guy that I want running the re-education camps. Remember, liberals value like open political conversation between two sides. That's a liberal feeling. That's not a socialist or communist feeling. That's not a fascist feeling, right? This is a liberal idea. Illiberals tend to not care as much about that debate. They'll point to having these ideas in society, period, are harmful or hurtful. They don't want them there at all.
Hasan just said that there's a kind of creator who loves debating. Doesn't really care about any of the things that he debates about, and is relatively skilled in rhetoric. I think this is really interesting. I think we can learn something about this, and I know a lot of us...
Wow, so interesting. He's made these claims without asserting any evidence, but they're going to bring the evidence now for this, I'm sure. Okay.
Know this history, but, we look back in the history of philosophy, especially Greek philosophy, you see a distinction between, let's say, like a Socratic figure, right? And what marks a Socratic figure, or literally Socrates' followers, Plato's students, was an underlying motivation for knowledge and wisdom. In particular, an underlying motive for knowledge of oneself and understanding oneself such that they can understand the world around them and seeking out ideas like truth and justice. And of course, a knowledge of their fundamental ignorance. You see this in all those dialogues. Now, there was another type of person operating in that context, the sophist. You hear like sophistry. And these are people who are skilled in rhetoric as an art, who are good at giving convincing speeches. But these are often people whose...
I think one of the most annoying things, remember I say people wield things aesthetically while divorcing the function entirely from it. This is a really good example of that. So an attack that's used over and over against me is that Destiny obsesses over rhetoric, and that's it. But the reality is rhetoric is actually my weakest part. It's funny because if you listen to any of my debates, rhetoric is the thing that I struggle the most with. That's why I have notes on like, okay, well, how can I improve my rhetoric? Or that's why like before a debate, that's why like I'll try to make, wait, why can I not open these? Oh, like I try to make like rhetorical approaches. Like I try to strategize for this ahead of time because rhetoric is my weakest point. Rhetoric is the only thing that people I debate have. I think I had more notes for rhetoric in this debate than literally anything else, actually. Yeah, like rhetoric is the thing that I struggle with the most. It's the only thing these people have. Like, ironically enough, these people right now are engaged in pure rhetoric. There is no factual foundation for what they're saying. This is another reason why when I argue about things, I always try to ground it out in some example, right? That's why I can show you like, oh, here's my notes for this. Oh, here are my my debate prep for this. Here's an example of what I mean. I'm trying to ground things out in examples so you can see like when I say something, there's like a real world analog to what I'm saying. I'm not just like spewing random shit, right? Whereas we're like, oh, Destiny, all he does is rhetoric. No, my dream debate is just like autistic quibbling over discrete factual events. That's what I prefer the most. But most people don't do that. They speak in broad strokes and in narratives and in stories, which is the thing that I have the most trouble with. It's very unnatural for me to do that. I don't think that way generally. I'm like, give me the stat and the figure. Like that's my brain, which is funny because I also get made fun of on the right for that. People say, oh, what's wrong, Destiny? You don't have a study to show you that getting cut isn't good for your relationship. Huh, you need a study for that, right? They'll make fun of me for the exact opposite thing. But it's so funny that he's engaging in like empty, hollow rhetoric right now while engaging me, whose biggest issue is rhetoric, of engaging in empty, hollow rhetoric. That's a wild turnaround to me. Like it's this is wielding these attacks as aesthetic over function, right? Like he just wants to appear intelligent and have these attacks, but they're like empty. They're the exact opposite, really.
Giving convincing speeches. But these are often people whose...
Like, is that me? Is that what you think when you think of Destiny? Oh yeah, he gives convincing speeches.
And these are people who are skilled in rhetoric as an art, who are good at giving convincing speeches. But these are often people whose aim or goal wasn't self-interrogation and external interrogation about wisdom, truth, beauty, meaning. The motivation was currying favor, being on the side of the politicians, making money, convincing people to follow your ideological program, or just getting attention, right? So I think that when we think about debate and rhetoric, one of the things I think about is, what is the motive for those things? And here, at least, Hasan Piker is describing someone who debates because they love debating, debates because they're skilled at rhetoric, not because they are knowledgeable, not because they care about those things. And I think this is important. And I do think, we'll talk about this more, when it comes to debate, I always think the first thing you have to ask, or at least the first thing I would ask myself is...
The first thing you have to ask is an unanswerable question that allows me to write off my opponent's position completely without ever considering it, which is, what's the motivation for my opponent to argue? Oh, I bet the motivation is something that's not good. Therefore, I can ignore everything they say.
Does this person care about the thing they're speaking on? Do they have an invested, emotional, or like in the Greek sense, pathetic, pathos-based interest in the thing?
Yep.
Or is this just like a sport or a game for them?
And then if it's a sport or a game, I can write everything off.
Whether that's someone debating political ideas, debating their favorite games, debating music, people who love the thing are always going to be more interesting, and people that have a humility and are willing to interrogate themselves, always going to be more interesting. And of course, Hasan brings up that a lot of these people, one person in particular, loves saying gamer words the N-word specifically.
Is that good rhetoric? Is that good pathos or ethos? Careful though, because you can't say if I engage in only rhetoric that I do logos, because that would imply that I at least have to have some factual foundation, right? Do people forget that logos is part of the rhetorical triangle?
And we don't have politics or stances on Wisecrack Live, but Henry, are we comfortable in agreeing that white people just don't get to say the N-word ever?
Yeah,
Are we comfortable
yeah.
with that as a stance?
I think we are. Yeah.
Don't take this the wrong way, but you're generally quite unconvincing in an emotional sort of way, but much more so in an analytical way. I think if you were better at rhetoric, you wouldn't even have half the problems you do with these communities. You understand that you're just repeating what I just said. Yes, I'm aware of that. Yes. The rhetoric part is my weakest part. Yes. Which is why it's so funny to hear the opposite from these people.
Just don't get to say the N-word ever?
Yeah.
Are we comfortable
Yeah.
with that as a stance?
I think we are. Yeah.
Does the subscriber to view ratio make sense to you? Some channels get really popular in the past and they've got a hard time staying relevant.
This video is...
So they either continue to do the same type of content or they try to pivot to whatever's popular and ride the waves off of that. Or they can reinvent themselves, although that's really rare. But it looks like these guys tried to pivot to political commentary and they're doing okay. I think this channel gets still over 1 million views per month. Yeah, which isn't bad. But they must have been popular a long, long, long time ago if they have over 3 million subs.
You just don't say the N-word, guys. Just don't. Just don't. Even if... Yeah, never mind.
Which is so funny because presenting that as a thing with no argument or was this... Yeah, dumb, whatever. But it's
so
okay.
Go ahead, Henry.
We're about to get deep into the very big philosophical, factual foundations that they're going to use. It's just they start off with this, but it gets way better. Trust me, I'm sure.
I feel you're about to say something.
Oh no, I don't. I was gonna just bring up the same thing. Even in stuff where people cite it as an excuse to say the N-word, like Blazing Saddles,
Okay. Even if you were a sophist and your arguments were valid, would it matter? Were you a sophist anyways? Kind of a baseless argument. I believe that a sophist by definition is somebody that engages in irrational argumentation. Isn't that what sophistry is? You would never say well, he's a sophist, but he makes a lot of really good points. You'd say, oh, he's a sophist because he makes what looks like good points, but they're always irrationally founded. I thought that's what sophistry meant.
the bad guys are the ones saying the word in Blazing Saddles, and they're portrayed as complete fucking idiots. So even within the context of whenever people try to justify it, just don't try. Don't.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too. If someone who presents themselves as an intellect or a rhetorician or a debater, you just ask yourself, if someone takes the time to try to intellectually justify using the N-word as someone who is not a black person, what is the motive?
Can you not see that this would be the exact type of basically retard level analysis? How can you go on invoking Socrates, dialecticalism or dialecticals? Is it dialectalism? Dialectism? Material dialectalism. That's not the word. Material. Is it dialectics? It might just be dialectics. Sorry, too many isms to me. Yeah. How can you invoke fucking dialectics, Socrates, sophistry, all this, and then you're like, the N-word,
as someone who is not a black person, what is the motive?
Now, are we going to... Now, he said that he was interested in people that engaged in a whole bunch of, critical thought and questions. So we're going to say, well, the motive could be this or that, or the motive could be this or that, or maybe he blah, blah. Or is it just going to be well, the motive is racism?
Right? What would be the self-interrogative or externally interrogative principle? What would be the seeking of wisdom? What would be the teleology of that desire other than A, it's dank to be edgy, or B,
racism,
getting off on transgression or something like that.
Yeah.
And there is a way, of course, that one could
how could we use so many words, so many $10 words, and then we're so the only possible way they could do it is if they're kind of evil or really evil, right?
You can do a thing where you rhetorically break down logic and break down language such that technically it's okay when I say this word, but then that completely, in this case, obfuscates the idea that that word is connected to a history and a context, and that word has a very effective particular political, oppressive meaning in a community of people that you are not a member of. Okay, let's go back to the Wired interview. That we're not here to express opinions. We're just seeing what Hasan Piker said.
Recently, I feel like that happened
Yeah,
recently.
It happened like 2 weeks ago, where he said the N-word on a podcast.
And then
2024.
And we have people getting really upset about the word cracker.
Yes, which is really funny because like that is.
I'm gonna pause real quick. I don't know if any of you guys probably know this.
Do you think he's going to represent what anybody was mad about in any of these conversations correctly? Place your bets.
He didn't catch.
Or do you think he's going to summarize it as, how can you care about the C word but not about the N word? There's a reason why we call it the N word, and we can say the other one.
You guys probably know this. I didn't catch up on this till recently. That then the response to in this debate, it went from like, it's okay for white people to say the N-word, but then cracker is hate speech. It's not.
Definitely a very like reactionary aspect of the gaming space in general, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, the power dynamics there are questionable at best.
Yeah, and it's been going on. It's been going on for like the past like 5-6 days now, where everyone is like, yeah, you can't, anti-white slurs are on it.
Am I just psychotic? How can so many people talk about someone else without an expectation of bringing them on and not come off as sore losers? Well, I think we're probably a more unique community where if somebody talks about somebody, there's an expected like right of reply, basically. Most people probably are used to talking about others without them coming on to chat about it. I think, maybe. What, are they? Actually, I'm not sure if that's true. Because I feel like even in mainstream media, people will invite people on talk shows to have an argument and stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm making too many excuses. I mean, it is bitch-made behavior. It is, right? How do people watch this predictable garbage? These guys are so boring. Because most people watch stuff to feel comfortable. A lot of you people watch me to feel comfortable, even though you fuckers shouldn't be, okay? Which is why I have to throw a food take out there every now and then to throw you off your rocker. But most people just watch it because I tell them what they want to hear. And right now, what these people want to hear is Destiny bad.
Into people like the etymology of the word and like the power dynamics and the history of chattel slavery. So it's not just like drama per se. It's not just me being like, that guy says the N-word. You're listening to a guy who says the N-word, and I don't hear you criticizing him saying the N-word. You left that shit off, but then you spend a ridiculous amount of time talking about how dangerous it is to make anti-white racism permissible. I mean,
a ridiculous amount of time? Who does this? None of this is true. I always wanted to ask you this. Do you ever think it is a good strategy to appeal to emotional morality in these types of debates like immigration? Yeah, a good speaker weaves all of these together simultaneously and then leans in more on one or the other depending on the environment. A good person should be able to lean into the strength of their character, the emotionality of their arguments, or the logic that they're deploying for an argument, like simultaneously and with different weighting depending on who you're talking to or what the topic is. I've got a lot of problems with the ethos and the pathos part.
All three of us are white in this room is laughable, right?
How are you able to read the double speak when it comes to these online conversations? How do you know when someone is being earnest or weaponizing these ideas they are using to attack you? Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Well, in some cases it might be hard, but it's really obvious in this case because you can just like listen to their words. Like if they're saying things that are factually not true, then obviously there's a reason why they haven't even bothered to do like the bare bones research. And then if they're like parroting the same like dumb talking points I've heard over and over again, like generally there's reasons why people do this. Yeah.
It's a laughable thing to be like, someone called me a cracker. Oh no.
I've been called so many worse things.
I am curious in the chat or if anyone listening has opinions on being called cracker. As someone's from Florida, there was, you know, the Florida cracker thing was the thing. So someone in the chat, Psycoms, good afternoon. It's incredibly coincidental you're talking about this, as I'll be in a debate with the D character tomorrow about whether online debates matter. Send us the link to that. Psycom.
Oh, that guy's gonna be on my debate panel tonight. Nice.
Interesting. That is interesting.
How can you listen to the same 20 recycled points to family or character? I don't know. It's boring, but I realized, especially after the Hasan chat, I probably need to respond to it so that there's like the responses are out there.
Bingo Bear says, I don't think anyone white feels bad if someone uses anti-white slurs. I do not feel bad. If you see me in the streets, please use an anti-white slur at me and be creative.
It's so funny that like creators like this imagine as they're speaking that like 70% of their audience is like black people clapping for how brave they are, when the reality is 100% of their audience are white people that are all clapping at how brave collectively they all are. It's like they imagine themselves like this, but in reality, all of these people are just as white as Daenerys. Like, that's what's actually happening.
Creative with it. Let's get back to
exactly right. And it's like it's so obvious what's going on, but I do think that a lot of people get duped. Like good-natured people that have some biases get duped into like reactionary framing on that issue. It's like bullying. It's wrong. It's bad, sure, but it's like when you make that comparison, when you flatten it out and say like this is all bigotry and it's all unacceptable, and the people saying that are literally also saying the N-word simultaneously, I'm like, well, you don't think that kind of bigotry is unacceptable at all. Kind of seems like you're making this a talking point because you want to expose hypocrisy where no such hypocrisy exists. So that
it's also crazy the hardcore analysis on every single part of my character, everything I say, everything I say I stand for, everything, like none of that can be taken at face value. All of that has to be second guessed. Not second guessed, also just flat out rejected. It's not being second guessed, it's just being flat out, it's being rejected out of hand, right? But for Hasan, every single thing he says is fucking gospel, especially when he's saying things about me.
that's, I try to use that as a teachable moment.
We're going to listen a little more. He gets back around to some of the comments.
Or maybe he's about to be critical of what Hasan is saying.
For other people who listen.
Who are the other streamers that you do like that are focusing on politics coverage right now?
And doing it well.
There's a lot of great people. You have Sean the Black, Frogan, Caroline.
Sean the Black made death threats against me and says he wished that my ancestors would have been killed.
So easy to just, it would solve all of our problems. We would have socialism at this point if someone just went out of their way and it would be so easy. This is what happens when you don't kill every single slave owner after slavery. That's what you get. You should totally be allowed to call it violence against destiny.
Like, this is disgusting. Exciting news! Twitch has chosen me to be featured as a legendary woman on the front page, together for legendary women front page carousel, not just for March, but for the entire year. Frogan on October 7th. Leftists preach and foam at the mouth at the thought of a revolution happening in America, but as soon as it happens in the Middle East, what they're doing is wrong.
Personally donated 10K because I think it is worthwhile. And if you guys got some extra bread, I would recommend you donate. But I won't throw it on you, you know what I mean? No.
Look at the bottom bar, emergency rent. Jesus Christ.
This is a cracker take.
Frogan uses racial slurs celebrated October 7th, is pro-Israeli rape, pro-Hamas.
Right now.
And doing it well.
There's a lot of great people. You have Sean the Black, Frogan, Caroline Kwan.
Caroline Kwan said it would be good if I had never existed, called me a worm. 5-minute video, I don't think we've watched on screen before, also spreads misinformation. She believes that Palestinians, Christians, and Jews all lived together in peace before Christianity even existed.
Jesus Christ.
What about Jesus Christ?
That's where he's from. Nazareth.
Yeah.
What was the demographics back then?
Please say Palestinians. I'm just kidding. She wouldn't do that. That would be pretty funny, though.
That would have been
year zero.
Just about BC. It would have been a mix of Palestinian. It would have been a mix of Palestinians, Palestinians, Arabs, Jews, and Christians.
It was a mix of people in this area.
But Palestine,
and that changed over time.
Well, yes, but
they got along back then.
Yes. So
wasn't it? I don't know my ancient history. Wasn't it the year? Was it 70 BC or AD when like the whole Jewish kingdom fell and Rome like fucked them all up? They were all getting along back then. Is that what we're saying right now, or what? Like,
this is a common misconception. Okay, people think that Muslims, that Arabs and Jews have been feuding for centuries, when in reality,
wait a minute, how can there be Christians before Jesus?
Well, we're talking about
like early. They just knew. They had a good feeling.
We're talking about like Jesus. Are you talking about before, like as Jesus was?
There's no way a baby can be born and all of a sudden there's a religion.
What? Bro, there's so much weird. I don't even know what the fuck I'm listening to. I don't even know what the fuck I'm listening to right now.
Central Committee. There are a lot of like Twitch.
Central Committee said that when he sees me at TwitchCon, it's going to be on site.
On site, you know, I would like him to come to TwitchCon and we'll see what happens. I could afford all the lawyers.
The guy is well known for introducing a black person because they were black. He thought they were progressive. They were actually a Project Veritas operative. He brought this person to AOC. He falsely lied on stream and said that he was ready to beat this guy up for it. But when the video got released, you just see him awkwardly shuffling around fatly in the background.
Streamers specifically that also do political coverage. Carter's another one. Gremlo.
I don't know these two people.
So there are definitely content creators that are doing this sort of thing, but beyond that, I would say, you know, in the YouTube space, there's a lot of essayists that are great. They write a lot of YouTube essays. They do a lot of YouTube commentary.
YouTube.
They're great. There's a lot of great people overall. None of them engage in debates, which is great. I hate people.
Only
like,
for you. Yeah.
No, I mean, I
actually
do
spoke
debates
to you in
from-
2021 about the Sam Cedar Steven Crowder debate.
Oh.
And like how.
And I'm so curious, like, what the cognitive dissonance is here. So you're listening, so you just want to know this whole thing about how stupid and lame debates are and how pointless they are and dumb. But now we're about to do, like, the epic Sam Cedar. By the way, Sam Cedar is known as, like, a debater-type person. That's, like, one of his big things that he'll go on and debate people. Do you think there's, like, any spiritual whiplash from this, or...
Were you around for the Sam Cedar, Steven Crowder debate, Henry?
I vaguely remember, didn't like Ethan Klein surprise Steven Crowder with Sam Cedar, and then like, he ran off.
Yeah, it was not great. It was not great.
Well, that's the thing. Like, debates are just purely for entertainment. I think it can have an.
And then just note right here, this is the part of his comments that Destiny reacted to in particular. So the first thing you just said was debates are just purely for entertainment. And
maybe that's the cope that like, oh, well, seeing Sam Cedar debating would have been funny. So that's the only reason we would have wanted to see it, I guess. Maybe that's the...
I mean, I do think, and we'll listen to the rest of his comments and then we'll talk about this a little bit more. But, you know, I think we have to ask the question as well, when a debate takes place, what is the context for the debate? What is the goal of that debate in maybe a more material sense? Because, for example, I've been at academic conferences before where there's a debate. And maybe it's a panel of people and they're discussing a book and they're debating that book. Or I've given papers before when I used to be an academic where there would be a respondent. And in that room, at that setting, I would say it was always one of two things happening. Either one, I would give a talk or someone else would give a talk and I'd respond. And that person would respond because they shared an interest in interrogating the meaning of a text or an idea. And maybe they disagreed with me or maybe they wanted to push me on some ideas. That's what happens most of the time. Occasionally you would have that person in the academic context who wanted to use that as an opportunity to say, look at me, I'm the biggest boy, I deserve all the treats. But that's, not as common. But some of these debates that happen now, we have to ask ourselves, like, they're happening on platforms that are designed to grab our attention, to get clicks. They're monetized. There are people trying to sell us things. So I think to act as if a lot of the modern online debates weren't, at least, if not purely, at least in part or large part for...
Hold on one second. Nice.
For entertainment seems disingenuous. We'll listen to the rest of Piker's comments.
An educational component for sure, but overall it's not about like whose facts are solid. It's more so about who says them in a more solid way, and also it's the theatrics. It's a good way to maybe bring some people over.
Ari, previous message about writing articles / posting on Substack. I feel like that would also cut through the muddiness of people talking about rhetoric and debate. No, because these people are never going to read anything I fucking write. That's not going to happen. I'm already posting stuff on Obsidian. Like, look at my Kevil's manifesto. Nobody in any of these communities read any of that, but now they're all hopping on to what was my conclusion from any of that. Also, I like how, like, well, they're just spectacles that can bring some people over to your side. Yeah, isn't that what the point of a debate is?
And also, it's the theatrics. It's a good way to maybe bring some people over to your side in the margins. But overall, it's not activism. It's not, doing something meaningful. It's not even like genuinely learning about an issue. It's more...
It's not activism. Well, I mean, it could be a type of activism, I guess. But yeah, activism is a separate thing. It's not meaningful. I mean, by whose estimate, as opposed to what, going to a single protest? I mean, like, what? I mean, like, anything can be meaningful. Obviously, there's like different room for all sorts of different types of actors in a political in like a political field. Some people are good at being politicians. Some people are good at being activists. Some people are good at raising money. Some people are good at volunteering their time.
So learning the talking points.
Which honestly,
But that's the end of the interview. There's a couple other comments there. Again, that's on Wired. Shout out to cousin-in-law Leah Feiger at Wired. It did that. So, I'm going to mention one thing from the chat, and we'll get back to that. Ancom Sidecom said, my position in tomorrow's debate is that online debates are typically entertaining sophistry. They're more for the entertainment of an audience than an attempt to convince, much less to find truth. And again, to look back at...
Yeah, debates aren't really where you go to find truth, because debates are like a contest. But that would be like saying MMA fights are where you'd go to like get stronger. Well, no, you're supposed to do like MMA fights are supposed to be where you see who is the strongest, right? Or the best fighter, right? A debate is supposed to be where you see like, well, what are the best debate points or the best debating people, right? Yeah, of course, that's not where you go to. You don't go to find truth in a debate. Hopefully you both have done that before you come together and have the debate, right? That's obviously...
Piker's comments, he says, it's not about whose facts are solid. It's more about who says them in a more solid way and the theatrics. It's a good way to maybe bring some people over to your side in the margins, but overall it's not activism. It's not doing something meaningful. It's not even genuinely learning about an issue. It's more so learning the talking points.
Okay. I like it's obviously it's stupid, but how long did they talk about me for? The subject of debate. Oh, okay. Like 10 more minutes? Jesus Christ.
The reciting the talking points, it's about putting on the aesthetic of like how to best make it look cool.
This is why I'm saying I hate all the shit that I like stand for and do, is because like everybody that uses the words that I use, like everybody that uses these words is always the biggest fucking red flags in the world, right? So it's so crazy here that he's wielding my aesthetic argument as an aesthetic. Like that's so meta mindfucky. Like holy shit. Big brain idea. Next time you have a big debate or Pierre Morgan, you should challenge Hasan to a debate on Israel-Palestine and say it is for charity. Tell him Lex would host it. I bet you he wouldn't do it. Probably not, but...
Talking points. It's about putting on the aesthetic of like how to best make it look cool. How do I, within this constraint of conversation, like make my thing look like the most aggressive and boastful?
What's the difference between a talking point and an argument? I can tell you the difference, but they have the talking points. The difference between a talking point and an argument is if I give you one line and somebody gives me the level 0 challenge to that line, do I know the next line of the argument? If the answer is no, you just know talking points. That's a good example of like Hasan. That's why Hasan engages in debate pedophilia and exclusively debates people under the age of 18 for that he pulls from his chat room.
I'm thinking back to how he jumped immediately to the founding fathers as his reference for what he's doing, and it speaks to me of just like where his head is at as far as like where he wants like the performance of being as prestigious as the founding fathers. Or
like nobody was comparing the prestige part, right? Like this is a 75 IQ issue grappling with what a comparison is. Like Marie Le Pen reminds me of Hitler, and it's like the fact that the first thing that this guy thought about was comparing Le Pen to a guy with a mustache is like, I don't know if he's blind or doesn't know what mustaches are, or like what an unbelievably like we weren't having a conversation about prestige. That would be a dissimilar aspect of the comparison, right? To show that even more prestigious people engage in the similar aspect, which was debate. It wasn't a prestige comparison.
Is like integral to the importance of like national cultural doctrine as the founding fathers. It's wanting that skin more than it is like digging into it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you think. A couple weeks ago on stream, you can go back and check this out if you guys missed it. We talked about the
if I could harass people in any way, it would be call out culture. Like in August, if you make this a video, it should be like a call out. Like, I will debate either of you two, or have a conversation or talk or whatever about any of the shit you're saying here. I think that for as long as people invoke my name and then mischaracterize me like this, every comment section you have should be like, hey, why are you guys still avoiding Destiny even though you're talking about blah, blah, blah. I think so, until people just don't talk about me. If they fear the Dally banner, they're scared, then they should be. Then yeah. Because like, if you're going to be this much of like a spineless, cowardless right, and you're just going to like blatantly lie about me or try to undermine me or poison the well in any other community you're in, yeah, I think you should get every single comment section of it should be like, hey, so why'd you sell this shit but you weren't willing to talk about it? Ugh.
Lamar and Drake beef, and some of what happens in the context of online debate just reminds me more of rat beef in terms of like, who's the loudest, who says the craziest thing, who makes you say oh shit, and that sort of stuff. Because
like, and again, you need to demand this from every other political person you listen to, okay? You need to give examples when you're saying something. Like, at least give examples of what
says the craziest thing, who makes you say oh shit, and that sort of stuff. Because I don't think, you know, when you, some of the big online debaters, whenever
you know what would be the ultimate fucking meme? Have these guys in any video anywhere commented on how disappointed they were in Finkelstein's performance in our debate because all he did was scream and call me names? Or do you think they said it was fucking epic the entire time? Oh, hold on. He responded. Do I have... my DMs are open, right? Yep, they are.
Force myself to watch these things. It's a lot of yelling. It's a lot of name calling. It's a lot of aggressive emotion.
Yelling, name calling, aggressive emotion. Oh my God, I'm so curious. Wisecrack... Destiny, Finkelstein. $8 months ago. Jesus. Oh, this is even before any Israel-Palestine stuff. Does stuff like this not make you think they just don't care, LOL? Like, I think they know they're full of shit, but they have an agenda. I don't know how self-aware people are. I truly don't know the answer to that. I don't. This other guy speaking, is this the tall guy that I'm going to talk to soon? Is that the guy who's right now? Or is it... Wait, hold on. Wait, so real quick. The guy who's talking to him right now, is that this debate coach guy that I'm going to chat with? Or is this a different... Or am I about to talk to a different guy? It might be, actually. Wisecrack, he was understand right.
Said, with the Destiny example, I'm someone who until recently was pretty unfamiliar with Destiny. We talked about the, I guess, debate
no, it was a chatter.
Jordan Peterson and Destiny that took place a month or so ago. Ironically enough, when we watched that debate, I was way more sympathetic with Destiny than I was with Jordan Peterson, but said a couple things.
Oh,
Destiny's
crazy. When I was arguing against the right, all of a sudden I'm like reasonable, rational, logical, like engaging in Socratic, introspective, self-dialectic, meta-cognitive, like, but now when I argue against the left, oh, well, now he's, now he undermines himself by, not being critical, not being introspective, debating for debating, and it's worthless, and he thinks he's a founding father. Okay.
I was way more sympathetic with Destiny than I was with Jordan Peterson, but said a couple things that Destiny's audience really didn't like. His audience is not a good advertisement for him as a serious person. But, people in our audience, people that I like, even kind of push me. Some of our friends on Discord were like, hey, Michael, you should check this out. He's a little hyperbolic, but he makes some good points. But then as soon as I see him just like jokingly saying the N-word, it's like, I don't want to why would I take you seriously? Because if you're doing that, I don't trust, your motive. Now,
what do you think that he trusts, like Adam Friedland? Or do you think that he trusts any of like the edgier lefty people who engage in... What about like Cenk Uygur or any of the Young Turks people who have historically...
I'll maybe come back to this. I have a section pulled up from Plato's Republic.
Oh my God.
In particular, I have Alain Badiou's translation, and then that was translated from the French by Kenneth Reinhardt and Susan Spitzer. Alain Badiou, a French philosopher I like a lot, rewrote...
Oh yeah, or Norman Finkelstein, yeah.
Republic in more modern language. And I was reading some of this, and maybe we'll get to this in a little bit. And I was reading it to remind myself, because there are people on YouTube and in the streaming space who will reference Socrates and Socratic method to give a structural justification for their style of debating. But I think that what they miss out on is there's a motive underneath that structure, and the motive is seeking out of truth, justice, and the good. And in reading through Socrates debating with young people, there's a care and there's a strategy and there's a desire to get someplace that I don't see in a lot of the online debating space. Now, in one sense, is it fair to hold Twitch and Kick and YouTube streamers to the standards of
I actually really like the channel. He usually speaks about philosophy, not politics. It should be a red flag when somebody knows a lot of theory, but they can't do any of the application. I think that should be a major red flag, because there's two escapes for this, and lacking both of them is a character deficit. The first escape is being good at both, being good at philosophy and being good at the application of it. But the second escape is knowing that you're not good at the application of it and then just not talking about it. Saying like, oh, I understand like a lot of philosophy and philosophical theory. I don't know how this like manifests in political theory. I'm just not aware of like how people practice this in, empirically or in application or in these ways. I don't have that experience. So, but to confidently venture into this area and then make all these statements, especially against people that inhabit the space with so much more time than you, shows a severe deficit of understanding of your own limitations, which ironically enough is a good example of what he's criticizing me for, I guess.
Socrates? In a sense, no. But in another sense, people are asking to be taken that seriously, and they're claiming that their style of debate and what they're doing can have a real political and ethical effect. And, if we're going to break down, and this is maybe...
When does he come on stream? The tall boy guy is ready to go. I'll just finish this and then...
One of the people I'm about to reference, but all I know, someone that lives in the city of Los Angeles, where Hasan Piker lives, there are multiple instances in which I have seen or heard or whatever, that he's on the ground showing solidarity and participating in political and labor actions that are largely on the side of a just and egalitarian spirit. And whether that is supporting, striking union workers in Los Angeles, bringing pizzas to protesting students at UCLA, I think that when I see things like that, and then I watch someone like Hasan participating in any sort of debate, I think to myself, like, this is someone who, regardless of rhetoric, seems to have made clear in an active way what their social and political principles are and how those motivate things. And someone who is, at the end of the day, a good materialist.
Actually, I don't actually even believe he does philosophy well. I don't believe it. Or if he does, I have a really hard time understanding, especially philosophy, that demands some adherence to... No, actually, that's not true. I shouldn't say that. It's not like all philosophy is like hardcore... I guess like syllogistic writing or like doing like hardcore complicated prop logic or doing hardcore complicated like wherever you're doing like would you call them philosophical proofs? I guess not all of it is like that. It could just be like basically, getting high off your own farts and writing big papers about abstract things. I guess it could be because this is demonstrating like a severe like lack of critical thought, which Hinkle literally tweets charts of Jews in politics and media. He's literally a Nazi. Nazis aren't the only people that hated Jews. Far left people hate Jews too. Okay, careful on that one. Okay, Stalin had a plan for getting rid of the Jews in his own country. He just fucking got fucked by Hitler before he could actually enact anything. I mean, like the first, the idea that only the far right hates Jews is not true. Listen, everybody hates Jews. Okay. All right, let me use the restroom real quick and then I'll chat with this guy. Well, not this guy. We're talking about the other guy who was on the call. Do you want to introduce yourself for all the people in chat?
Oh, we're streaming. Hi, I'm Lux. I'm the director at Wisecrack. I guess I'm a former award-winning debater and professional debate coach, although it's been several years since that was my job.
Well, that's cool. Wait, what do you mean by where did you for college level stuff or other like?
I was a top 10 high school debater for my junior and senior years of high school, and then I was the debate coach at Bard College or at least the debate coach at Bard College my sophomore, junior, and senior years in college.
Okay.
And I did assistant coach work with a couple of teams other teams, including the NDT and CETA winners at Emporia.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. All right. Well, do you want me to start or do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, however you want to do this, I guess. I gotta be honest, online debate stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into, is not really a thing I hold in especially high esteem as a practice. So I don't actually know where this is streaming or anything. So I would love to be able to look at the chat or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to youtube.com/destiny, I think the live stream is like on the front thing there. Yeah.
Cool.
Although it can be really distracting to read chat and talk at the same time.
Yeah, I just want to know what's going on,
Sure. Okay.
I probably won't look at it. I do this on all the Wisecrack streams too, and then never end up looking at it. But I just like having it up. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess how do you want to do this? Because I'm there's a bunch of shit we can talk about. Obviously, there's always a bunch of shit to talk about. But I'm happy to talk about me and Burns' stream from yesterday if you want. If you want to talk about what umbrage you took with the stream from yesterday, we can use that as a jumping off point.
Yeah.
I can jump in from sort of my approach to it, however you'd like to do this.
Sure, we can go specific and then broaden it, or broaden it and go specific. Yeah, I guess I'll start specific and then we'll broaden it, I guess. I think the first thing that I get a little bit frustrated about is I feel like people that are in communities outside of what I directly interact with seem to obsessively misrepresent my motivations, what I say, debates I've been in, and it seems like it's always done for like social credit purposes. Ordinarily, I might not care, I guess, depending on what people are attacking me for, but it's very frustrating that the well is so poisoned against me in so many communities by people that are engaging in like the most like sophist type arguments, I guess, to borrow what you guys are talking about, that are like imaginable. So for instance, like, well, I don't know if do you want to respond to that, or do you want to get into specifics, or?
Well, yeah, okay. Well, actually, that raises three quick questions for me.
Sure.
Well, one is an ambiently raised question. My dogs are moving around. If I start going outside, am I allowed to smoke cigarettes on your stream?
You can do whatever you
objectionable
want.
Practice?
Yeah, go for it.
That rocks. Second of all, yeah. So you mentioned like your purpose or like your goal of doing this kind of stuff. Like that was sort of, you talked about that being like misrepresented, right? That's something you said. So like what is that, right? Like what is the objection here?
So personally, my goal is I want people to do more reading and research. I want people to adopt more critical approaches to how they analyze their thoughts and arrive at their political positions. I'd like to be influential in terms of how people think, because I think obviously my opinions are better than other people's opinions. That's why they're my opinions. And then I want to motivate people to do things in real life political, like organizing or real life political events, basically. They're kind of like my four like broad things, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. So that seems cool. So then, I guess to me, and obviously I think this is probably a place where we're going to diverge meaningfully, and that's totally fine. To me, the online debate stuff as a practice seems almost antithetical to that goal. Almost diametrically opposed.
To which part?
Because to the idea of getting people to critically engage with their political assumptions. And I don't think, I don't mean this in sort of a like manipulative claim or anything, but just that the form of the debate by its nature becomes this question about like who people think wins and who they think loses. And the only mechanism people have to evaluate that are the sort of ideological claims or ideological positions with which they come into the debate, right?
Sure, but when we say that like debates are a bad way of getting people to critically engage with their assumptions, there are a variety of ways you could do it, but how is arguing with somebody who has a different opinion than you, or watching an argument between two opposing opinions, how is that not more critical engagement than just watching a video essayist tell you something that you already agree with? Where's the critical engagement there?
Totally, yeah. So I think you've hit on something that's a distinction I would like to draw. I think arguing with people is a great way to enhance your critical engagement of a topic. I do it all the time. I love it. It's so fun. My girlfriend is mad at me constantly because of this tendency of mine. But I think watching a debate has a different set of pre-existing, good way to put this, pre-existing agendas is the wrong word, but I'll just use it because
you come into it with an ideological bias. I agree with you, but
right,
nothing about that is.
And so then, as a watcher, you're judging that debate in those terms. And so instead of it challenging those presumptions, it's a matching game to who matches those assumptions more effectively.
Yeah, but you're describing every single thing, all things are like this. Even going into a college classroom, you can come preloaded with ideological bias. Going into a video essay, you can come preloaded with ideological bias. Going into anything, this is the case, right?
Right, yeah. I think like one thing we try to do at Wisecrack that we're not always super good at, and something that we try but we're not great about, obviously, is that like we try to present alternatives to our own shit and leave the citations as visible as possible, cite our authors, etc., to encourage further work on that kind of stuff.
So you acknowledge so you guys might do that sometimes. That might be the case, but you acknowledge from my video that wasn't the case. You took the word of a self-admitted propagandist Hasan about things that he said about me, most of which were completely, totally not true. You took that word at face value.
Well, no, I personally was mostly reacting to your reaction to the song clip, which is what I saw.
Sure, but even your reactions, like for instance, you know what a comparison is, right? You know that a comparison aren't two identical things, right?
Right, but I was saying that was a bad comparison.
When I say that debate is an important part of political movements because debate has been, especially in the United States, like a really important part of convincing people to do things, and then I cite like the Federalist Papers where politicians or politically minded people writing to ordinary citizens trying to convince them of certain ideas, how is that a bad comparison?
I think that's a bad comparison for a couple of reasons. I think the first reason it's a bad comparison is that those people aren't actively being sort of in the role of entertainer, which regardless of both of us, that is part of our job. And I think it's sort of silly to pretend like it's not. I also think it's a bad comparison because there isn't the sort of immediate feedback reaction. And while there were some immediate partisanships, the question of partisanship was part of the thing being defined. I also think it's a bad comparison because, I guess this sort of falls in the first or second thing. It wasn't like a YouTube or Twitch debate, right? Those are just papers being written. There are also papers being written somewhat for ordinary citizens, but also for other politicians. There was a very specific rhetorical and intellectual frame in mind.
Sure. So hold on. They were writing to newspapers at the time. They didn't have internet connections.
Not all the Federalist Papers. Like not all of those debates happened to newspapers.
I thought the Federalist Papers were all published to newspapers. They were published under pseudonyms to newspapers in order to convince citizens that this is why we need a federal government. That's why they were called the Federalist Papers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. They were.
So they were written in papers and newspapers, not in academic journals and not in halls debating each other. They were literally written in newspapers for the common man to, or as probably like landowners or whatever, but like not politicians to like consume and to consider those arguments. You mentioned,
but already the landowner distinction and the anonymous distinction are like pretty substantial here, right?
Yeah, in the United States now, thankfully, voting is extended to more than just landowners. So I imagine if they were writing the Federalist Papers today, they would probably not just write it in a way to landowners. They'd write similarly to how like the Communist Manifesto was written, right? Which was a pamphlet that was supposed to be accessible to anybody, right?
For sure. But I think that, again, I'm not going to say they didn't have an economic incentive because that's silly. Of course, they had an economic incentive to create those arguments because, like, fucking obviously, right? The whole Civil or Revolutionary War was effectively a project of economic incentives. But you guys are gonna get to see my kitchen because that's where my cigarettes are, I guess. But yeah, so that's true for sure. But I think that you're right that if it was written in a different context, it would have a different implication. But the fact of the matter is that, like, there was a given expectation of ideological position, et cetera, into those. And again, like you said, they're published anonymously, right? And they weren't meant to be immediately reacted to. They were meant to be effectively propagandistic positions.
Yes, but I don't think. But none of that. I'm just the only point I'm making is that like convincing other people of your opinions via some kind of persuasive process. It could be like a pamphlet. It could be televised debates in the United States were incredibly popular, and they still are. It could be, like literally two politicians arguing with each other. Like these are part of our historic tradition in engaging in politics, right?
Yeah, totally. I agree. I think that's true. My point is that, God, and my lighter's not working. This is embarrassing. But no, my point is that, well, that's true. I think that the context of the YouTube debate and the community around YouTube debate, Twitch debate, online debate, whatever, has rendered it in such a way that the comparison of its political stakes or its political function to something like the Federalist Papers is not a good comparison, right? I understand.
Well, I know you're saying that you're just reasserting your conclusion, but I'm attacking every single premise that you're laying, and I think they're either.
I'm not reasserting the conclusion because the fundamental warrant of the claim, right, is that the act of it being a YouTube phenomenon, the act of having a chat watching, the need to constantly be doing this to reassert its own value and to justify its own existence by performing it over and over and over again, negates to a certain degree its value as a political tool.
So you think that meaningfully, you think that having a chat watching or getting active feedback meaningfully negates debate as a form of like political activism or political exercise?
I don't think it negates it entirely. I just don't think it has
Like, give it a
nearly the value
percentage
people
from
say that
1
it
to
does.
100%. Like, how much does it negate the meaningfulness of it?
I would say that its political efficacy, let's say halved. Let's say halved. I don't know. I don't have a lab in front of me. But, like, for instance, right? Like, as soon as Burns posted that he was like, I don't even know how this whole thing started. However, Burns posted whatever he posted that led to all this whole thing. But my fucking Twitter blew up in a way it has never blown up before, with people saying shitty stuff to my friend before anyone had said anything.
Wait, shitty stuff to your friend. Wait, what are we referring to now?
To the tweet, whatever Burns tweet it was that led to us having this conversation.
Oh, yeah, because I'm
like-
watching him and you are, like, tearing through on this, like, this weird, just like the arguments you're giving right now. By the way, I don't necessarily disagree that there are more effective forms of political debate than others, but like the arguments that you used on the stream were Destiny thinks he has the same prestige as the founding fathers, that's right. The point of the comparison had nothing to do with prestige. It had to do with.
No, it's not. I don't mean prestige in terms of like, whoa, look at this fucking guy.
No, you did. You did. Hold on. You did. Yeah, because later on you go on to say like, oh, he thinks it's as important as like what these guys were saying than when these guys were real politicians passing legislation. Those are the arguments you were using earlier. Now you're using a whole different set of arguments. You acknowledge that like none of the arguments you've given me here, you didn't say any of these.
The argument that I make later in that video is about performativity and the performative function of debate and how I don't think it's good.
Yeah, but when you say the performativity, but you're saying now that it's the fact that there's a live audience with feedback.
Well, that's what it makes it a performance, is that you're performing to a group.
Well,
right?
you define performance wait. When you say performativity, the implication isn't that you're performing to the group. The implication is that you're changing the content of what you're saying for that performance, right?
Those are both true, but I think if you like look into performance theory, a pretty top end part of it is the idea that it's for an outside viewer. Like that's.
Well, but then in that case, everything is, depending on how you go by, if that's the definition for performativity, then everything is a performance.
Right. Most things are. And I'm saying that the performative aspect in this case is a problem for its political efficacy.
But haven't we said before that every type of like online stuff can hold a decent sway over, like when we look at like Charlottesville, a lot of those guys came from literally online fucking forums and shit. Or when we look at,
I'm not going to say that like people don't get politicized online. They obviously do. I don't think that that's wrong. I think what I take issue with, what I think is sort of silly and self-indulgent, is the idea that something like what you and I are doing right now is anything more than litigating debates that other people have had in more compelling and more interesting ways in other places.
But like you say, more compelling and more interesting, by what metric? More interesting and more compelling. How are you measuring that?
Better thought out, better formed, not just like me stopping looking at cruise videos for a video essay to chat with you about a thing because you tweeted at my friend and I thought this would be interesting.
Sure, but if you have a debate that is like the most compelling and interesting debate ever, and it has like 10 people that watch it, and then you've got another debate with 5 million people that watch it, does it really matter? Like, which one is more politically effective?
I think that's an interesting question, because I think that something like, for instance, the Foucault-Chomsky debate, which I like quite a lot, is extremely fascinating and has turned out to be an extremely important political document, even if it wasn't at the time. Right? Like, I think that there's a meaningful amount of sort of time span. I think you're probably right that if you and I have this conversation about how much we think online debate is or is not useful today, right? And 50,000 people watch it or whatever. I don't know how many viewers there are, but whatever. Like, a bajillion people fucking watch it. And then some other place somewhere else, like 2 scholars of online performativity have this debate and 50 people watch it. And then in 10 years, people are doing scholarship on these questions and dig up the 2 debates. The one that they dig up from the performance scholars is probably going to end up being more useful and helpful and politically significant.
More useful and helpful maybe when they're writing a paper at each other, but what was more influential at the time?
Or in the formation of like downstream political ideology, right? Like that's how all this stuff happens. Like you mentioned the Communist Manifesto. It was effective in its time, but it's only grown to a greater degree of effect over time because of its significance to the broader construction of a movement.
Sure, but the current political opinions of a people that are impacted by the things that they watch are also important because we're voting and we're deciding on politicians based on the things that we're seeing. Like, do you think that Joe Rogan hasn't influenced people to vote in a particular way or take stances on particular topics?
Well, I think so. Joe Rogan's actually a really interesting example. I like talking about Joe Rogan. I think Joe Rogan has done that, but not because of his debate shit. I think Joe Rogan has done that through this sort of process of constructing an ideological sort of aspirational figure for a certain set of people, and then associating that ideological aspiration with a specific political project.
Yeah, but part of that, I mean, you're just saying in more words, part of that is bringing on different types of people and having debates on his show.
But I think what I'm saying is that those episodes are much less effective for that project than the ones where he's like, has some weird guy on who's like, you have no way of pull a bear open with your hand.
You have no way of quantifying that, though.
You're right. I don't. But by my estimation of talking to people who've watched Joe Rogan, of having spoken to Joe Rogan in life by mistake once because I live in the same town as him, things like this, I have come to that conclusion. You're right. I can't quantify it. I cannot.
Wait, so when you talk to Joe Rogan fans in real life, one of the first things I feel like they always bring up is like, oh, I like Joe Rogan because he'll bring on anybody.
Yeah, I think that that's something that they like but I think a lot of people, I talk to them about their politics, how they derive their politics from Joe Rogan, talk about very specific ideological baselines that Joe Rogan reiterates over and over and over again. And those ideological baselines are more often reiterated and more often calcified in the episodes where it's just like two guys talking about like, whatever the problem with women is or something.
Sure, that's a part of it. But I mean, like the debate aspect is a part of it as well. Like it's a whole thing.
I'm not saying that the debate aspect doesn't exist or have some implication. I'm saying it is the lesser of the, if we're going to split into two sections, it is the less effective of the two.
It might be, but it could also be a necessary element, right? Like it might be a thing that where the other thing weighs more, but if you don't have this other part, it doesn't necessarily work as well. Like if Joe Rogan refused to have people on of contrary views or whatever, then the other parts of him talking about monkey magic and mushrooms, people might not care as much about. It's like, oh, well, he doesn't even bring on opposing views.
Yeah, I think that's right, but I don't think it's because the debates are so good. I think it's because it gives him a veneer of legitimacy.
Sure, that's fine. A debate might give you a veneer of legitimacy. There's like an aesthetic versus a function of it. Sure, that's possible.
I think that, and that's sort of getting towards the performativity thing I'm talking about, right? Is that like a lot of this is just aesthetics. Like I think this conversation we're having would be a perfectly fine one to have at a bar over some drinks, and I think that that's great. I love that. But I also,
you don't think anybody listening to any of these conversations aren't getting influenced in any way, size, shape, or form?
No, I think they are. I think that my claim is that there are more effective, and if not more effective, more intellectually rigorous mechanisms for doing that I think are a better mechanic for that kind of engagement than online debates.
You keep saying like
even in the burn stream, right? That we were talking about. I say a bunch of times, if you like this shit, go do it. It's fine. Like you can have your cool debate TV show that probably has some ideas in it. That's neat.
But that's not what you're saying. You're saying that you can do it. It's fine, but it's a total waste of time. And there's like a way better way to engage. Like just because there's a better way to do something doesn't mean that the other thing is worthless, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying it's in the burn stream. If you're gonna cherry pick things I said in the burn stream, you got to do all of it, right? Like on that stream, I talk about like it's fine if you like it, and I even have at the end there's a part where he's like, "Do you think these things are totally worthless?" And I say no. Right, I say that like there is some value to honing ideas, banging them against each other, and watching that can be fine. If it's fun, you like it, that's good, whatever. I just don't like it, and I think it's silly. But like that doesn't mean that it can't conceivably have value for someone. Obviously, like it's wild to presume that.
Do you think that part of the reason why it's hard for these debates to have value is because people like you and your co-hosts like constantly like in bad faith like ascribe all this malicious intent and like degrade like any of the opposing opinions that other people might have? Do you think that hurts people's ability to engage or take anything of value from these things? Like,
I think it's funny to call that engagement in bad faith, because I think early in that video I go, look, the way Destiny debates doesn't make him a bad person.
Like, no. Hold on. Your claim over and over again was that I'm like rhetorically, or well, your co-host said this, so I'm assuming you co-sign it. Maybe you completely disagreed with him, but it was over and over again that like, oh, Destiny's just rhetorically effective, but doesn't engage in any factual analysis, which is funny because that's what Hasan does, is all rhetoric and no factual analysis. But you're like comfortable parroting that opinion that like, oh, it's just rhetoric. Oh, it's just like bullying each other. When it's like, that's just one aspect of what the debate is. There's like the whole note taking, the researching, the before and the after. There's like a whole process to this thing. And it's just.
Again, on that stream, I said, I do not find the amount of rigor on the streams that you do, and I also lumped in Ethan Klein, Hasan, other people in the same group. I said I do not find the amount of intellectual rigor this more compelling. That's true.
With regards to what topic?
I mean, the few times I've watched, but as I've said on this stream.
Well, no, give me an example. Like, what's a time you've watched where like, oh, there's no intellectual rigor here?
I mean, the N-word stuff that popped up today, I found to be very sort of shallow and lacking a sort of structural analysis of power in a meaningful way.
Yeah, we didn't engage because it's not a huge topic for that. It was like a 20-minute conversation that somebody wanted to come on and have.
It's the thing that I heard about today, so it's on my mind.
Well,
right?
you had this opinion because you gave a whole thing about me yesterday when you were on the things. You had an opinion before today,
there's
so
there's the Finkelstein debate, which I also thought was very silly.
okay. What did you? I'm curious. So for the Finkelstein debate, what was silly about that? What did you?
I thought that it really lacked a structural analysis of sort of the historical power dynamics that were at play.
I agree with that, but why did it lack that historical structural analysis?
I thought that you were not bringing that to the table. I thought that others were trying to, but doing admittedly not a great job at it.
Do you think? Do you acknowledge? Will you admit that Finkelstein was by far the worst player in that debate? That in the entire time he just threw around insults and didn't engage like substantively with any point that was brought up at any time in that 5.5 hour conversation?
I think he engaged more than 0%, but I will say I expected better from him in that debate. I really
do you acknowledge that he was the most like abstinent, the most like insulting, the most ad hominem throwing, the most belligerent?
I think that might be true. I would have to go back and reread. I don't really keep score on this sort of thing, but I'd have to go back and read.
Are you aware? You maybe not aware. Are you aware? You would be if you watched the whole debate. That he was literally on like Brianna Joy Gray's show, laughing about how he intended to go into that conversation in bad faith. That when Moeen was like seriously arguing with us, he was like, "Oh no, like you're not going to legitimize them. I just want to scream at them." Like he literally was on Brianna Joy Gray's show talking about this. That he was going into that with the intent of just like stirring shit up the entire time.
I don't watch her show, so no, I didn't know that. So
okay, I mean it's pretty obvious when you watch the debate. Like Finkelstein.
I think that there's a big part of what he is doing that is him being like, I've been a scholar in this for a long time, and I do not appreciate the sort of emergence of people getting into this discourse and sort of muddying the historical context of it with sort of undercooked stuff. And I get where he's coming from, although I think he handled it a little bit like a baby. But like that was very clearly what was happening. I understand that to be true.
Okay. Do you think that there was a time in that conversation? Can you remember a single time where you feel like I was unwilling or unable to engage in a historical, factual, or moral analysis of what was being said?
I think there was a lot of parts where the historical perspective was reduced largely to. So I'm grabbing a ginger ale. It's hot outside. I live in Texas. It's like 96 degrees. I think there were a lot of parts where the historical analysis was very much boiled down to the sort of specific question that assumes. Like the specific framework that kind of assumes the necessity of the Zionist state or the inevitability thereof, without sort of engaging the many failures on the side of the Zionist entity to like, actually in good faith construct a peaceful dialogue. I think a lot of that got written out of that debate. I think a lot of that didn't get engaged with as precise as it could have.
Well, sure, but this wasn't my fault. This wasn't even Moeen's fault. It definitely wasn't Benny Morris's fault. This was because Finkelstein came there with 2 Benny Morris quotes and then wanted to scream ad homs for the rest of the conversation. Again, I'll reiterate, like, was there a time where you feel like I was unwilling or unable to engage in any part of that conversation? I'm pretty sure I answered every question.
I think yes, because I think that if there was really a serious attempt to frame things in a structural way, you could just like stop the convo and be like, let's do this. I don't think you did a lot of that. I will say to your credit that it was not like easy mode, right? I don't want to be ungenerous. I don't think that was the easiest situation to refigure the conversation towards a more historically rigorous framework. I also don't think it happened.
Well, yeah, it didn't happen, but 3 of us there were trying, but Finkelstein prevented it from happening the entire time. Like 3 of us were willing to have like a historically rigorous conversation, but Finkelstein was unwilling or unable to engage. Like, again, I'll ask for the 3rd time. Like, was there a question that I wouldn't answer, or was there like a thing that it seemed like I couldn't like understand? Like, this didn't happen.
It seemed like there was a lot of weight put on the question of Hamas at various points in a way that sort of undercuts a lot of Hamas's contemporary sort of internal politics. B, doesn't really engage with the historical formation of the organization.
Well, sure, but I mean, like we spent the first like 2 hours of that conversation, I think, literally revolving around 48. I don't think Hamas is even a huge part of that conversation. Right, but again, I don't think there was any part. So there was no part that you can think of where I was unable or unwilling to engage in the factual or historical analysis, right?
No, I mean, also we can also start with the beginning. I think starting at 48 is also a mistake. And the sort of unwillingness to rewind to sort of the.
Why do you keep saying unwillingness? Nobody was the only person unwilling to engage in the conversation there was Finkelstein. Do you admit that he was the only person who was unwilling?
fine. I will. Sorry for unwillingness. The failure to engage. I was, trying to be. I was interpreting myself as being gentler. If you don't like that, that's fine. I could say failure instead. The failure to engage those.
Hold on, wait. Failure and unwillingness are two totally different words, right? You were the master debate coach, right? If unwilling implies that you don't want to, that like you don't have the desire, you're unwilling to do something. That's different than like, well, they didn't. They failed to do this. That's
right, yeah, and I thought that was sort of a nicer characterization, but if you disagree, that's totally fine.
You think that's claiming that somebody's unwilling to have a conversation is nicer than claiming that somebody failed to have a conversation? I mean, that could be, I don't think most people take that implication there, but...
I think so, but if you don't, that's totally fine. I'm happy to use failure. That's totally fine. That's
okay,
not my bad.
Sure.
I'll take responsibility
Yeah,
for that.
I mean, figuring out where we were going to start that conversation was difficult. Obviously, different people like to start at different points for a variety of reasons. But again, like Finkelstein was the only person in that conversation who was unwilling to have a real talk. Like everybody else was willing to do it. Betty Morris was, I was, and Moeen Rabin was.
There was a distinct failure to actually do it. So causes aside, right? This is, again, to go back to our original topic, right? To go back to the online debates thing. If the possibility is one person being a baby means that there's a failure to meaningfully engage something in a way that deserves that degree of rigor, then the project itself probably has some structural problems.
Yeah, but I mean, this is true of everything. Like a couple people can ruin almost anything. Even the peer review process can be fucked depending upon your particular institution or the people that you're working with, or like.
Oh, don't I fucking know it? But
wait. So then, what is a process that you hold up as better than?
I don't think I do think the peer review process is better, even if it can be totally fucked. But like, my point is more that the claim that online debates provides a sort of intellectual rigor when it has all of these sort of pitfalls and traps built into it, that it's not doing the job that you want it to be doing.
Yeah, but it's because of people like you and your co-host. That's the frustrating part. Is that nobody will engage on a so I listened to your guys like talk about all of the criticisms, I guess, that you guys had of me, or mainly your co-host, to be fair, not necessarily just you, although you kind of do it as well. There wasn't a single substantive analysis or disagreement on a single thing in this entire conversation. And even when you just did it now, even when you just did it now over the Finkelstein debate, there wasn't a single substantive disagreement ever. It's all based on like feelings and vibes. What?
Well, it's because it's been months since I watched the debates. I don't have a key poll for it. Right, like
sure, I know, but I mean, like, it's frustrating that every single person that I talk to seems to run to the mouth like, well, I don't remember a single thing you were wrong about. And then when I go and watch any of the critique, there's none. Like, this video was a video that got put up that involved at least like a 30-minute chunk here of like big critique. And I always make this joke before I watch on stream, like, well, okay, guys, maybe today this will be the first one where somebody brings up something of substance, but it's not. It's just this vague allusion to like these like philosophy terms, and like that's it.
To characterize the video like correctly. The video wasn't about you, right? The video was about online debate as a project.
You can say that, but I'm the lens through which you're examining it. You literally listen to a 10-minute, or you listen to a clip of like Hasan shitting on me for a few minutes, and then shout out the, and then shout out the Wired person for talking about it. I think you claim that I think I'm like as prestigious as a founding father, and then I guess you can say that it's just like a general analysis, but I'm pretty clearly like the focal point of this section here.
I think that's a little bit self-indulgent, especially for the part where I was on the show, but. And I can't speak to the rest of it because I was busy doing other stuff. But like, because I don't watch the whole thing. I was busy doing my job. But like, that's fine. I mean, like, if you are inclined to take that as like a rigorous rebuttal, and that being the purpose of the project, like that's your prerogative. I think it's not
that I'm claiming this is a rigorous rebuttal. I just think it's funny that when you guys spend 30 minutes talking about people's obsessive focus over rhetoric and engagement in sophistry, that all you guys engage in is rhetoric and sophistry, right? Like if you wanted to say like, oh, this guy like only cares about rhetoric, and he only, he's a sophist or whatever, here are like 2 or 3 examples of this, then I'd be like, okay, this makes sense. Like, yeah. But to just engage in like vibes and feels where it's like, oh, well, I think he like defends the N-word and that's why I don't listen to anything that this guy says, or like, oh, and here's Hasan giving like scathing critiques of him, all of which were untrue. And then like, this is like so basic good. And it's like, okay.
But again, like, you're talking about parts of the video that I wasn't on. Burns isn't here. Seems a little unfair, especially since the whole premise of me being here is you being like the guy getting critiqued ought to be able to defend himself. So. Oh wait,
the other guy? Or you mean the guy in the video isn't here?
Yeah.
Oh, listen, if he wants to be, yeah. Well, the other guy won't talk to me.
Well, he's busy.
No, he's not too busy to be on Twitter all day, like tweeting at all my fans or whatever.
I mean, I know he's doing stuff because I'm getting messages about the stuff that we're working on. So like,
well, hey, listen, I'll come on an episode of your show. It'll be a high viewership episode. I'm sure it's worthwhile financially for you.
That's something y'all can talk about for sure. That's not my bailiwick. But like, I'm, whatever. I'm not the programming guy. Y'all can do whatever you want. But point being, right, that I think there were some pretty reasonable arguments being made in a sort of Marshall McLuhan, medium is the message type way about how when the core purpose of a thing is intellectual rigor and intellectual analysis, that the performative and sort of foreign audience aspect of it undercuts, excuse me, too much ginger ale too fast, undercuts that primary goal. I think that is true. I think that what ends up happening, like I've said, is you get a lot of sort of my guy versus your guy stuff, and there isn't. And I think that there's ways to fix this. I don't think that online debate necessarily has to be this way. I talked about that in the video.
Hold on. I agree with everything you're saying. I 1,000,000,000% agree. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I do agree that there are these huge hurdles to overcome when you're having debates. People are super ideologically dug in. People engage in a lot of argumentation that has nothing to do with like the actual factual construction of the argument. I agree with all of that. My issue is that's what you guys are doing. I try not to do that, but so many of you guys on the other side just have so much insane shit to say about me. And like I spent so much time like writing stuff down, taking notes, doing research, publishing videos, like talking about my debate strategies, like talking about the facts I go through. And then when I wind up in a debate with somebody like Finkelstein, he calls me names the whole time. And then everybody in like this other political camp like starts laughing. They're like, that was actually epic and owned. And then they come back and they go like, oh, well, actually, I think debate's not a worthwhile way to convince people. It's like, why? Because you suck at arguing? Not you personally, but like that's what it feels like. Like people just get mad at me and then they make these crazy characterizations of me. And then it's like, oh yeah, well, like why not just like not talk about it? Just leave me alone. Like just say like, oh yeah, I don't think debate is that like important online. So I just don't think about those people. That's fine. Why be like, oh yeah, Destiny made this comparison about the Federalist Papers being political debate because he thinks he's as prestigious as a founding father. Why not just like not talk about me?
I mean, so discussing the contours of what internet debate is interesting. I like doing things that are interesting. I like things that I am interested in. I do the job that I do because I enjoy thinking about stuff. That was a fun thing to think about. I took a little bit of a time out on a Wednesday to have a conversation about a thing I think is interesting. I think that's pretty normal. I also am a little confused because if you agree with the sort of critique that I have as a generality about the nature of online debate, then I'm a little confused why you're also saying that the arguments that are being made are bad or unworkable if you agree with the basic claims that are being made, right? You see what I mean?
The argument, no.
Like if I go on the street,
no, I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is that like everything has like pros and cons, right? So if you were interested in the analysis of a thing, then you would probably go through the entire thing itself. You wouldn't just spend the entire time shitting on it, right? So online debates have like what?
That's a mischaracterization of what happened in the video, right? There's parts of the video where I talk about the value of debate. I answer chat questions about it. At the end of the video.
I only watched this 30-minute chunk in the middle, and then I found you. So there might be at the end. Maybe you say something more about it.
Yeah, at the end, I talk about how there's value in honing ideas and stuff. I don't like it. I think it is silly. It's not for me. But like, obviously, it's insane to say that it is totally valueless. I think that's crazy.
Okay, then you shouldn't have any confusion over my position. There are limitations to debate, but then you try your best to control for those limitations, right? If you feel like people engage in some things negatively, then you try to control for that. Just like in peer review or in academic publishing, there are negatives, and you try to control for that as well. Like
and I talk about that in the video, right? That like I think a thing that is missing in a lot of these online debates is the presence of sort of an arbiter or moderator or judge, right? The way that you have a policy debate. And as much as I don't like policy debate, there's a reason I stopped working in the field. Like, I think that presence matters a lot because then there is someone to actually arbitrate the claims that are being made, to look at evidence, to make analysis based on what's actually material versus what's just characterization.
That's great, and I love what you're talking about. That would be awesome. That doesn't exist right now, right? That's not a real thing.
Right, well, that's my point, right? Is that...
Then why not ask for like, oh, like I think online debate, like it can do this. Like we need to set this up though, or this, rather than saying like, oh no, actually all of this is dog shit. These people have no principles and they do it performatively, and then...
I did that in the video, right?
What, in the last like 10 or 15 minutes? Or I
say in the video that there needs to be a judge. The fact that there's no judge is a problem. If you wanted to do something like that, that would be great. I'm not an online debating guy, right? I'm just a guy. I make movies and I make video essays and I do comedy. I used to be a debate coach, but like I'm like that's not my job. But you are an online debating guy. You are a guy who seems to whether, you know, we agree to disagree on this, well, like, you seem to think this has a lot of value, which, you know, like, chase your bliss, like, that's fine. But if you think that's true, and you also think that there are these structural inhibitors to maximizing the thing that you wanted to do, then if you wanted to do that, you could just do that.
Well, you try, but it's not that easy, right? The Finkelstein debate that you brought up, that had a moderator. Lex Friedman was the moderator to that. If you're talking about like a more structured debate with a moderator, like keeping track or keeping score, like how do you even do that on a debate over like the efficacy of vaccines? Like neither side is going to even agree on what the moderators should look like. There are shows I've been on where the moderators have like sided against me. I went on Breaking Points and I did a debate against Omar Badar and Ryan Grimm. Basically, both of them arguing the whole time. I argued against Sebastian Gorka and Konstantin, a guy that does the...
Oh, man, one time I prank called Sebastian Gorka and he got so mad at me. That was so funny.
Sure. So I mean, like, these are things that like we're actively looking to try, or at least I like actively try to do this to elevate the, I guess, like the conversations more. But again, the engagement from the other side, and it's always people that seem to disagree with me that are really mad that their particular figures are getting, like smashed up or can't have a conversation or can't represent their views outside of like
instead of arguing the position that other people who aren't me, who you don't like, have. Like, I'm the one who's here, right? I don't.
Sure, that's fair. Maybe I'm ascribing too much of what your co-host said to you, I guess.
Yeah, well, Burns, but also just like it seems like you're talking about a bunch of people who just like exist on the internet, which is tight. I mean, like.
No, I'm talking about what he was saying. These are things that like he was saying in the conversation that like he said I have like no principles and that like my goal for debating is just to make money and.
Yeah, I don't know your political principles. I have a strong sense that on some of them we probably disagree fairly strongly. I probably have 20-ish more minutes I can do this. If we want to get into it, we definitely can. I got, whatever. Sure. But that's sort of, I think, what Burns is getting at, and I think there's some truth to this, although I'm not going to ascribe your personal motivations that can't live inside your brain, is that I think a lot of times online debates, and I'm not talking about yours specifically, ones I've seen that exist.
Well, wait, hold on, wait. Well, since you don't want me to talk about general people and now you've been talking to specific, then don't talk about general debate. Talk about me specific. The claim that your co-host made was that I have no principles, right?
Right. Well, I'm not. Well, let me get to the end before you get mad at me. You
I'm not getting mad. Okay, you said you had limited time, but go ahead.
Get there. That like a lot of times the debates are about a specific thing without a analysis of the first principles of why we want that thing, why the thing is good or bad, etc. And it just becomes a back and forth about the specific policy, right? Or specific topic, without sort of a discussion of why is it good to talk about this thing? Why is this thing important in the first place? What are the first principles here? I think that is often missing. I think that's what Burns is getting at. I don't think.
Hold on. That's not what when he says I don't have any principles, he's not saying that the issue is that they don't start with epistemology and meta-ethics and work their way down. He's saying that I'm valueless as a person. I'm just arguing for money or grifting. That's the obvious claim.
I can't speak to that. I don't think either of well, again, I'm not even gonna try and speak for Burns because I can't. But like, I think the core of it is like, for instance, correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, because I might be wrong with this. So like, feel free to correct me. You classify yourself as like a progressive guy, right? That's true.
Center left progressive. I don't usually use the label progressive anymore because I think progressives online are gotten crazy. But yeah, it depends on who I'm debating on what topics. But
sure. So, but then you've like made a bunch of donations to like police projects, right?
I did one time.
Okay. So right, this is why I'm double checking everything.
So
like those those don't feel like aligned. But then okay, so then I guess the third question would
be wait. So is there a strict orthodoxy?
I skipped a step. So let me I goofed. Okay. So let me ungoof myself. So then like what is it about center left? Like what are the values that you have that make you feel like center left? Like what are the things you believe in to be true? Like what goals do you pursue in that capacity? Like what does a better society look like to Destiny? Sorry, I don't know your actual name.
Sure, Stephen. Yeah.
What does a better society look like to Steve?
I guess like in the most broadest macro sense, kind of like a Rawlsian curtain type of thing, where I think that there are distributions of tax policy, econ policy, government incentives, educational stuff, where we can move things in society to benefit the most amount of people. That if we utilize things, so for instance, we understand like marginal utility, we can understand that a guy that makes $1 million can probably lose $10,000 and not lose much, and a guy that's making $10,000 could receive $10,000 in subsidies or benefits and gain a whole bunch of stuff. That access to education and healthcare are good equalizers. Yeah, I mean, it's going to basically be like your standard lib or lib progressive takes on things related to taxation and redistribution of wealth. And then when it comes to social policy, it's going to be like depending on what particularly we're talking about. But I'm generally like a really big advocate of like pro LGBT stuff. I'm generally a big, I say advocate. I mean, I would support their rights. I mean, obviously, I support like protected classes. There are things where I think when the empirical evidence looks sketchy, I don't like support as much. So I'm not sure how I feel, for instance, about like affirmative action or DEI stuff. I don't know if there's been like good evidence to show that these are like efficacious ways of improving the positions of minorities in society. But yeah, these are like broadly speaking my positions. We can go deeper or not on any particular thing.
So then, to me, and obviously, like you can reconcile this. This is something that I have difficulty with. There's some tension between being like I'm an advocate for protected classes, for LGBT rights, and also being supportive of like police as an institution. Right?
I don't think so. I think everybody likes police. I think we need people to be able to arrest people when they're committing crimes or doing bad things to us.
Right, but the policing institutions in America don't do that very much, and they mostly tend to
protect capital,
harm people who would be protected classes.
Okay, well, nobody in the United States seems to agree with that on a broad level, and I haven't seen a compelling replacement for the institution of policing. If somebody had like a suggestion of like, oh, well, like here's the thing we could do instead of policing, I'd be like, oh, okay, maybe I would consider this idea. But since I haven't seen that, all I can really advocate for is more transparency.
I personally am a big fan of something like community policing stuff. Community organized policing, community centered policing.
Really, you're going to trust and give the liability to a person on the block to kill somebody if they have to, if they're breaking into a home or trying to stop a rape or.
I mean, that's effectively what's happening now, right? Except that they're people from like Long Island or whatever, if you live in New York.
Yeah, but I mean, like there's a whole process and institution that we can hold accountable and have some level of.
So they never get held accountable.
Never. Cops have never been fired. Have never been arrested. Have never been.
Very rarely relative to the number of problems.
Okay, can you give me an example where community policing has worked better than like an institution of policing?
Yeah, I think I actually can. Hold on, I just saw something about this recently. Let me see.
And actually, you know what? The example doesn't even matter. When I'm asking this question, what I'm trying to demonstrate to you is that I don't have a principled attachment to the institution of policing. Nobody should. I have a principled attachment towards trying to keep people safe in a society where not everybody can obviously defend themselves. And from what I've seen, I haven't seen or been exposed to anything where the institution of policing does a better job than that. Now, if somebody was like, well, actually, in this country, on every block, there's like 2 people designated to do whatever thing. And in these, you can actually see the victimization has fallen, or compared to other like areas, it's way lower. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I probably like advocate for that system then. That seems like a better way of doing things. I've just never seen that demonstrated before.
Okay, so that's fine. But I guess the broader point here being that this I think to a certain degree is very much not your fault, but I think it is a real thing that exists. I know I deal with it also. There is a gap between what terms of art or labels of political position mean and the sets of beliefs that individual people's politics contain, right? There's distinctions there that people draw somewhat irresponsibly.
Wait, can you repeat that? Can you say that again?
I think that there are assumptions of meaning caked into political positions, political, labeling that imply certain policy beliefs that people presume and then are mad about their presence or lack thereof.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and so I think it is fair then to wonder where the disconnects are for certain folks. I think that, like, for instance, I am staunchly opposed to police as they are manifested now because I think they do more harm than good. I agree with you on the premise that there has to be some sort of public safety mechanism. I think the status quo publicity mechanism is worse than it is beneficial.
That's fine, but I mean, like, you acknowledge that, like Ahmed Arbery, that was community policing. Zimmerman, that was community policing. So it's not like these things just by nature of
they're not seamless for sure. And I think
sure, but I'm just saying that, like, there's no, like, I don't see a strong argument for why it would be better to have somebody like Zimmerman running around, looking for Trayvon Martins in the neighborhood, or why the guys that, ran down in a car, a dude who was jogging and shot him in the chest with a shotgun. Like, that's a better example of policing.
Right. No, those are bad. But in, like, for instance, Richmond, California did their, like, neighborhood safety thing, and homicide rates dropped super hard. There have been cities that where cops have gone on strikes and crime rate and reported crime rates have dropped. Like, there's examples in both directions for sure. But my point is that, like, or I guess, I mean, I really don't. I don't want the fucking universe of dudes who are just sending death threats to my friend Burns to hassle me online. But, like, whatever. I guess we're here. Like, I think. The Gaza thing is another one where I think the presumed center left position would be like a ceasefire and
Sure. So I have some bullshit because I write a lot about, like, trying to figure out, like, how people put the beliefs together. Right. So what you're talking about right now is a thing I understand. I call this a constellation of beliefs. People assume that if you have one belief, that you have like 10 others. For sure. I think that's bad. I don't think that's a good thing. Yeah, but then I would understand why an ordinary person would think it. So if an ordinary person hears, like, oh, like, Destiny, thinks that the N-word's not a big deal or whatever, I would imagine that they would assume, like, 20 other things, which is like, yeah, I get it. I understand why you would assume that, right? Or if somebody says, I'm pro Second Amendment, I would assume a whole bunch of things, sure. But as people that are in the position of being content creators or being debate master coaches or whatever, I would expect more. Like, when I'm looking at somebody, my goal isn't to try to say, like, oh, well, he said this, so I think there's like 30 other things he believes. My goal would be like, okay, well, you might or may not believe this. Let's see if we can find videos of it. Let's see if we can find evidence of it. Let's see if we can find, like, him actually making these statements about these things, and then we can talk about these particular things, rather than just making the assumptions and then, like, hammering down on those assumed positions. Like, this whole, again, the conversation topic through the lens of this Hasan, interview is like destroying the straw man version of me. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know what the point of all this was.
Well, again, I think that was a framing device more than anything else, but that's neither here nor there. We can agree to disagree on that, whatever. I also think I just got a package, so I hope no one takes it while I'm doing this. Surely they won't. We live in a fine neighborhood. But I think that that's true, right? The constellation of beliefs thing is totally fair. I get it. It happens to me with some regularity. Also, I was not the same as you. You are someone who is much more publicly exposed than I am by design. So that'll happen. But I think that there's some responsibility on your end, on my end, on our end as varying degrees of public figures to articulate the ways in which beliefs that appear incoherent or incongruous with the rest of our beliefs either function within that or are exceptions for a reason.
Yeah, and I do that. I've got thousands of hours of public content. I've got notes that I publish online for anything. I've got videos all on my YouTube channel. Like, I have all of this. But the reason why that doesn't matter is because people like you guys will take a 30-second clip or take hearsay from somebody else and then ascribe that to me and then spend the time, like...
I mean, I'm not here ascribing anything. I'm here having a conversation with you.
Now you are, because I've pulled you after watching you in the video, though, where you guys do this.
Again, I'm pretty positive in the video I mentioned you like twice, and it's had examples of things I didn't like, and then mostly just talked about policy or online debate as a project.
Maybe. I mean, the first thing, again, was saying that I see myself as a founding father in terms of that's the level of prestige that I'm looking for, which is like a...
Well, I think I was talking about the activity of debate being comparable in that way.
No, you were talking specifically about the example that I made, and you said, I think he made this example specifically because it's a prestige thing he's looking for.
I don't know if that's true, but I also don't remember, because
It was yesterday, a long time ago, so...
I'm not a big rememberer.
Okay.
That's why I have a notebook. And unfortunately I wasn't taking notes on myself on the stream. But like, I'm an improviser. It's just story goes away when you're done. But so the point I'm trying to get to here is that, like, if you're going to, for instance, and like, you can clarify your position on this however much you want. That would obviously be good for me. I think clarifications are good. But like, if you're going to say defend the use of the N-word or critique the function of rap music or whatever in its historical context, that is on its face and what it implies about a historical analysis of power is at odds with like a lot of the claims that you're making about like center left positions, right?
No, I don't think so.
You really don't? You don't think that the historical construction of language is implicit in power relations that like construct the
just because you're like, I don't think center left implies Marxist, and I don't think center left implies that you have to have the.
I'm not talking about center left in general. I'm talking about what you said before about wanting this like Rawlsian curtain and like the equitable distribution. A Rawlsian curtain, right? Like that only makes sense in a context where like historical power relations aren't reified all the time.
I don't think that white people rapping along with the song saying the N-word is reifying historical power relations.
I think that the use of language, the normalization of certain linguistic behaviors does normalize power relations.
That's fine, but if we want to argue against the normalization of anything, then you have to come out the strongest against the black community that sells music to white people using the N-word. Because nothing leads to the normalization more of it than that.
I don't think that that's true, because there's a conversation about, you know, about how the power relations, the power positions of people using that language matters or doesn't matter.
Sure, but if you didn't want to have we wouldn't even have to have the conversation. If the N-word was just for racists, that would be it. Like, nobody's making arguments for why everybody should be allowed to say gook, because Asian people don't make music saying Asian racial slurs all the time, right? It's only the N-word they have to argument. If nobody used it, then we just like, oh, okay, yeah, it's easy. We just don't say it.
I don't think that's the causal relation here. I think the causal relation there is that there wasn't a like historical movement that like appropriated those terms. And it's also, I think, a little bit silly to characterize as black people selling music to white people when a lot of that money, a lot of that stuff is white people extracting value from black artists, right? Like,
doesn't change it at all. I mean, I'm just saying that
I think that meaningfully does in terms of like this question of like how power works in this.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter though. You're creating art knowing who the consumers are going to be at the end of the day, right? Regardless of who's extracting money, it doesn't matter where the money is going. You could literally be extracting, all the money could be lost from you. But like if you're making art to be consumed by people.
That's why the linguistic difference matters though, right? That's why there's linguistic difference, is because of the power position of the people involved.
Not right? Today. Not today. That the link. Okay. I mean, I disagree, but I think
absolutely it does.
That's fine. Okay, listen, we can have this disagreement and I can still be pro like tax-funded healthcare and education. Like, I don't think I don't think we have to be 100% congruent here. Otherwise, I'm a Nazi. Like, I think that.
I'm not saying that. Jesus Christ. Right? Like,
Sorry, hold on. That was hyperbole. I'm saying that I think that we can be incongruent in our applied beliefs at the end here without me having such a lack of axiomatic principled foundation that I can't possibly have other center or far left beliefs on other things by not agreeing on this particular topic.
No, I agreed. But I think what you're saying and what sort of the position you have socially sets you up for is like that outcome. Look.
Can you give me an example of how that would tie? Like, let's say that you're a conservative or you're a far right person, and then you hear Destiny's take on the N-word. Like, oh, if he just said this, I'm going to take that logic that he's using now and I'm going to extract it and apply it to this to show him that he's a hypocrite. What's one possible position that I lose the ability to defend because of my stance on that?
I think that if you took back saying advocate, but if you're someone who wants to, who is protective of LGBTQ rights, someone hears you saying this, they say, look, they're doing the same thing with the F slur. We should be able to say that all the time, even though they don't like it. Those are incongruent positions.
No, I mean, not about LGBT rights don't have to do with saying slurs. They have to do with guaranteeing like legal and like institutional protections for LGBT people. So like a non-slur argument. Obviously, you can take one slur argument and transplant it to another slur argument. I'm saying what argument does this make me incongruent with for defending center left or far left positions because of my position on slurs?
I think there's incongruency there because I tend to think, and maybe we just want to disagree on this and whatever. I don't have time for that conversation because I got to go kind of soon because I have to finish the video. But that sanctioning the use of language that people within a community say is violent when used in specific context by specific people becomes or gets interpreted as a mechanism by which other oppressions and other means of doing violence becomes legitimated, right? Like this is there's bodies and bodies of literature on this.
No, not bodies. If you've read them, then share with me. What is like one concrete example for like, well, since you defend a slur, you're also saying it's okay to lynch black people, or it's okay to fire them for their race, or not give them a job, or like, what other concrete thing would this apply to? What applied position is now in jeopardy because of this?
So, how do I say this in a way that is okay? So, whether or not you intend it that way, there are other communities that sanction that kind of language. Those communities tend to also sanction other things that you obviously don't like or want.
So
like
you're
these
saying that I
far-right
shouldn't
communities
inhabit this position simply because people that I might disagree with on other things inhabit this position?
Well, and then what happens, right, is if people agree with you on that, they can theoretically become drawn to other people who make that argument and then fall into the same sort of, the next step, phasic down rabbit holes of, like we were talking about earlier, the effects of like online forums or whatever.
Sure. The really okay. So I asked you for an example, and then you gave me examples. So your general logic is that if I have a position, if I exhibit a certain position, and there are other people that exhibit it who have a wildly different set of beliefs than I do, I run the risk of some overlap there. Couldn't I levy this criticism at you like 1,000,000 times over for Gaza? Because Nazis and far left people are in total alignment with like how horrible Israel is at the moment. But like, I don't think you would tell.
The Nazis are also in total alignment with how good Israel is at the moment, so that one's kind of a draw.
I don't think so. No, that is not true. By definition, no. Trust me, they always hate Israel.
Oh, that is not true. That's not true. I got yelled at and had a thing thrown at me by a guy with a Nazi armband who at a pro-Palestine rally by a guy who was marching with Zionists. Like that's like you can whatever.
I mean, like, as an example of this, like, you literally, I don't know if you guys are aware of this or not, but your co-host literally brought up a far left person, Jackson Hinkle, who you guys thought was a Nazi. He's not a Nazi at all. He's like a tanky. He's very, very, very far left. That's been his whole thing.
I don't know Jackson Hinkle's full deal. But okay, so how do you...
But I'm just saying, all I'm saying is that, like, you wouldn't change your position on whether or not the Palestinians are enduring a genocide or whether or not it's an apartheid state or whether or not it's wrong just because Nazis might also share similar criticism of Israel, right? You wouldn't expect somebody to make that demand of you, and you wouldn't expect to do that.
Right, but you wouldn't. Would you assume that? I guess would you characterize it as always unfair for you, a person who exists as a publicly speaking guy, to have people make assumptions based on singular arguments of yours? You think that's always unfair, even though you put yourself in that position?
I would expect ordinary people to do that because that's pretty normal. I would hope for better from content creators. There I'm ascribing bad faith. If an ordinary person comes up to me and is like, oh, like, didn't you say like this argument or whatever? Like, I feel like you're this kind of person. Like, oh, no, I mean, I understand why you think that or whatever, but no, this is just one thing. Because I wouldn't expect every person, it's the Jordan Peterson argument of like, oh, you have to go and watch 1,000 hours of his video. No, I wouldn't expect that. But when there are other content creators that are showcasing other people's content, that's why we get paid money, is to watch stuff and review stuff and research stuff before we present it to our audience. So when other content creators are doing that, my bar for them, my expectation is much higher. So I would ascribe like bad faith or malice to them if they're not going through any of that homework.
But you would assume that like, or you would situate content creators doing that as bad faith, even in the context of sort of like, like structural analysis stuff, right? Like I understand, right? You're hung up on, for your reasons, specific allusions to your stuff. That's fine. I get it. That's pretty human. People are like that. I respect it. But like, it seems a lot like you're taking what was very much a conversation about an idea and being like, this is mean to me.
It would be like me doing you keep saying this, but the lens of analysis being me as the subject through which you talk about this particular idea, and then you're saying, well, don't get upset that you were the one. It would be like me doing a 30-minute segment on like, this is why I don't like Nazis, and I'm going to go over some things that Tailboy has said to show you what I mean. Like, and then if you were to come at me and you'd be like, well, hold on, wait, what the fuck? I was like, well, it's not about you. It's about like the Nazi thing. I don't know why you're acting like that's such a strange thing to be irritated by.
That would be crazy, because you would have a hard time with that one. But
no, wait. That's not the point of what I just said at all, right? You acknowledge that, right?
Yeah.
You're capable of perceiving the argument. Okay.
Doing a bit.
Okay. Well, it's hard to say you're doing a bit because you guys in this video call me unprincipled. You say that I engage in sophistry. Like you're comparing me with the sophist and against Socrates, who's like the introspective one. So the bit is indistinguishable from the actual position. So it's hard for me to tell when you're doing a bit. But
that's why we pay big money for improv classes, baby. But yeah, no. So okay, then I guess the question I have, just to circle back around to the original thing, is like, if the goal here is to have people interrogate their political assumptions, but for ordinary people, making flawed conclusions based off of this stuff is to be expected, then isn't there sort of an internal tension there as far as efficacy goes that is like,
well, no, you're like, that's the goal there. When you're trying to be influential or an entertainer or an educator or whatever the fuck, like this is always like the thing that you're pushing against, right? Like a person that does research in medicine or is publishing studies wouldn't expect an average person to have, you know, a college or advanced graduate degree level understanding of stats. But you wouldn't say like, well, don't you think there's a huge tension here when you publish this medical research that like an ordinary human doesn't understand stats? Well, no, of course not. What do you mean? Of course there's a tension there, but your goal is to like break it down and make it understandable. That's why science journalism exists, right? People will write articles about studies and stuff to try to like translate it and make it understandable. That's the goal, right?
Right, totally. But like, I guess what I'm saying is, do you not? Okay, here's the way to put this. There are well, you could maybe tell me this better. Are there not people who watch your show who are sort of like, I am a Destiny fan, so I default and plugged into Destiny's position on things?
Yeah, there probably are. Yeah. I mean, like, I wouldn't like that, but I would hope that there's one. I think that my positions are better than other people's positions. So if you are going to follow me for that way,
we got that in common, bud. Like,
sure. Well, yeah, everybody should have that in common. That's why they're your positions. Nobody's going to say that other people's positions are better than mine, right? Obviously. But like, I also hope that my fans hopefully are at least able to identify or understand processes by which you do better research, better reading, more critical, like meta thought analysis. Because these are things that I talk about a lot as well. I'm sure there are some people that follow me just because I say shit and they don't like follow along with any of the critical thought stuff, but that's unavoidable. But I think that my fans, I hope, are like more able to engage in critical thought than anybody else's. Like my issue is that like I spend more time reading, researching, taking notes, engaging in critical conversations on a lot of these topics than literally every other political commentator on the internet. And then when people talk about me, they're like, oh, that's the N-word guy who just debates for rhetoric. And I was like, okay, I've got like 100 pages of like notes on a thing. Like I've talked to and debated like in friendly and unfriendly terms, like scholars, academics, media people, people on the ground, like all these different things. And it's like, okay, well, that's actually all rhetoric and dumb. But Hasan, who like reads tweets all day, this guy is like a good example. This guy's base. So we're going to look at him as the really great example. And then we're going to look at this guy as a and it's like, this is like such a mindfuck to me.
Well, part of that's that Hasan is like an S-tier propagandist. And I do not mean that negatively. I think he's doing a good job at doing the thing that he's doing.
That's true. But then when you use him and then I'm the sophist, and you just said, and I agree with you, that he is a self-admitted S-tier propagandist, like a propagandist almost definitionally, by most definitions, is a sophist. They're not engaged in like truthful like communication of information. They're just trying to like persuade you to a particular thing, whether that involves irrationality or not. So why wouldn't he be the lens through which you do these analyses from?
Well, I mean, I mentioned him on the stream, but I mean, to bring the subjective into it, I tend to be more sympathetic to his political positions than yours, but that's not the point here. I think the bigger point here is that, like, you know, he says that's what he's doing, and that's also, you know, what you are also doing that, and so am I, right? We all do that. We are.
No, I don't. The same way that you guys say this. No, I try to engage in a way more fact-based, like rigorous form of analysis than just like these are my political positions, so I'm going to take the side of anything. And I try to activate people for real-life political stuff, which is why I've organized like some of the largest canvassing events for multiple elections now at this point, like utilizing and leveraging my fan base rather than just like being online and doing donation drives and like bragging about a big number. So no, I don't put myself in that same category.
I mean, that's great. Shouts out to people on the street. I've, you know, been organizing for candidates since 2008, baby. Let's go. It rocks. More people should do it. That's if you take nothing else away from this conversation, chat, I implore you to actually go do on the ground politics. Because that's way more useful than listening to us talk about literally anything.
But the people that are here right now hearing that message are only here because they're listening to us talk about this, right? You understand that? That's the whole point that I'm trying to make, that to undermine this and say like, oh, everybody should just do this other thing. Okay, well, right now there's like 16,000 people listening. This is probably the largest platform that somebody can have to like say like, oh, we should get into this political work. But this comes off the back of like other things. So it doesn't make sense to undermine all the other things. It's like, well, this one particular thing is good. And it's like, well, but it's built off the backs of all the other things as well.
Right. Yes. I think that if you want to make the argument that the fundamental function of the debate stuff is not the debates in themselves, but rather their ability as performance to attract people to a platform from which you can do other stuff that is distinct from that is good, I'm much more sympathetic to that than I am to the argument that the debates in themselves do that work. If you want to make that first argument, that the core thing here.
Sure. To be clear, I don't want to make that argument. That's been the argument I've made for like 8 years. Like if you've engaged with literally any of my content.
But that's not the argument you're making today. Where we were talking about the debate in and of itself being the meaningful intellectual value. I don't think that that's true. What I do think is true is the thing we've landed at right now, which is that effectively the debates are a cool, fun ad for telling people to go out and do cool, good stuff.
But in that case, do you understand that like a research paper is the same thing as a debate? There's no value in just the paper. The value is in the process of the creation of the paper, right?
I think that a person who reads a paper can extract more useful information from paper qua paper than they can from debate qua debate.
I mean, it depends on the debate, though, right? You said there was a Chomsky whatever debate earlier. There are some debates that I've watched where
there's some, right. There's bad research papers. I'm talking about in generalities, right? I'm not going to say that there's no such thing as a possibly good debate. There certainly can be. I'm not going to say there's no such thing as a bad research paper. Lord knows I've read them. But like, I'm talking in generally speaking.
Sure. Generally speaking, do you think a person can engage with the debate on YouTube more or an academic paper published in a peer-reviewed journal more? Aside from the paywall thing, which God, we could do hours on the paywall thing because that shit makes me crazy. I actually think a lot more people could engage with published work in a pretty specific way if they were given access to it. I think what you are right about is true. It's more people have access to stuff like this than they do to stuff like that. But I would encourage more people. Like here, this is I guess a bit of a silly thing to say for someone who directs video essays, but like when I watch video essays, I very often just go to the citations part and read what they cited rather than watch the essay. Why? Wait, that doesn't, hold on. What is your research background?
What do you, my research background?
Yeah.
In terms of why, like academically speaking?
Yeah, because what you just said, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you read the citation of somebody instead of the overall argument they're presenting? Citations are just going to be a part that is being used to construct an overall argument.
I would just read the citations from, because I'm less interested in their presentation of the thing than academic writing about the topic.
But there's not going to be academic writing just about that topic. The point of a citation is you're collecting multiple things to create a unique argument of your own. Otherwise, you would just read from a book.
A lot of video essays are people just being like, here's what this argument is. That exists. Obviously, when there are ones that are innovative, I almost said that Britishly, innovative, I will watch it. I'll start any of them, but if I start to find that they're just rehashing shit, I will just go read the stuff that they cite. It is more interesting to me in general.
Can you give me an example of a YouTube video you've done this with recently?
Yeah, probably. Let me.
Okay, wait, hold on. Okay, listen. I'm sorry. I love you. I don't love you. I hate you people. Okay, listen. You don't know because you don't remember because you have never done this before in your entire life. If you read a research paper, why would you have to go through your history to find this? You don't remember the underlying material you just read for a YouTube paper that you just watched?
Sorry, no. I thought you were asking for the specific video I read. I just read. There was a very cool research paper I just read about the history of cruises that was referenced in a different.
I can see your eyes that you're reading the screen right now. You don't remember the paper that you just read. You don't remember the underlying material.
I'm trying to remember the title of it.
You don't need the title.
Oh, you showed her the paper. Okay, sorry. I thought you wanted the title. I'm sorry. Sorry. The paper is about the history of colonialism and the construction of the cruise industry and the construction of the cruise ship as state of exception in like an Agamben context where because of things like flags of choice and ports of call, they aren't legislated under laws the same way other places are, and that the construction of that is like an inverse of the negative state of exception that Agamben outlines for places like Gaza or whatever.
Okay. Are there any final points or anything you want to bring up? Or
No, sorry. I misunderstood your question. I apologize. I thought you wanted the specific name of the paper. So I was looking it up for you because I thought it would be nice if we could share a moment. But no, not really, man. But well, actually, I do have a thing. That was rude to say you hate me people when I was just trying to give you a citation of a specific article.
I'm frustrated because you guys like are correct in identifying all of the problems, but then you project them onto me when you guys all like exhibit these things. Like you guys correctly identify when people are wielding aesthetic over function, but you're only doing that to wield the aesthetic of like being truthful or honest over the function of actually doing it. This is very frustrating to me.
I was just trying to give you a title.
You're giving me a title for you said you're working on a video for cruises. I don't care about the title for your video for things.
I wasn't talking about the title of the video. I was talking about the title of the cruise.
Yeah, but I wasn't asking for a paper that you're reading for a video you're doing. It was the idea that I
understood the question and you
it's
said
fine.
That's very rude.
I don't hate you because of the misunderstanding of this. I just don't like the bad faith engagement and analysis of like everything that I
misunderstanding the question.
That's not what I have the bad faith issues for. It was for the video that you were in with the Wisecrack guy.
Right, but I still understand what's bad faith about that. I still think online debates are silly for all the reasons I've explained.
It's not just that online debates are silly. That's a nice position to walk back to. It's that I am unprincipled. It's that debates are a total waste of time. It's that I had the incredulity to compare myself, looking for the grandioseness of the founding fathers.
Okay, I will give you that one. That I was flippant about that comparison, but all the other shit is just stuff that you're projecting onto me, and what feels like bad faith to me because you're just saying.
Sure, you said my motivation was self-aggrandizement for the founding fathers thing. Like these are your words. The
Yeah, no, I'll concede to being flippant about that for sure. So I can be flippant. I can be a dickhole sometimes.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. And I might be ascribing you things that the other guy said, which might be.
Or things that no one even said on the video. I'm just saying.
I literally just watched this video, like right before we talked, but.
I just don't think it's reason. I don't think it is a reasonable position for you to take to like be like, I hate you, people like you. You're doing all this bullshit. Ad hominems and stuff are bad. And then talk to me that way. Like I came here and I think I was pretty polite and engaging. And I asked a lot of questions.
Civility politics isn't. That's not what I'm looking for. It's just to be polite and engaging. My issue is that, like earlier, for instance, when I asked you about the Finkelstein debate, that you would bring that up as an example of me being unable or unwilling to engage in something when Finkelstein was a child. That there shouldn't even be a second thought of like, yeah, who was the worst person? It was obviously Finkelstein. He was screaming ad homs the entire debate.
Sure,
but it was like pulling teeth to get you to even admit that.
Sorry, that was a failure. Sorry, I should have said failure on your part instead of unwillingness.
No, it's not about failure, unwillingness. I was asking questions and engaging in the conversation and following along with Rabani Moeen just fine. Like me and Benny were. Like it was Finkelstein that was the abhorrent actor in that convo, and he had admitted as much afterwards on multiple shows that he just went there looking to troll because he thought it was fucking hilarious and epic.
It's weird that you say you're not looking for civility politics. It sounds like civility politics is exactly what you're looking for, as long as it's in line, or civility conversation, as long as it's in line with like the expectations that you have set out.
No,
right? Like,
I'm not looking for civility. I'm looking for engagement with the things I'm saying of substance. For instance, if you were to say that like I think Destiny is a fucking idiot because his analysis of this was so wrong because he's missing that, I'd be fine with that. Okay, yeah, fine. Say I'm done because of this or that. That's not. But I'm not looking for civility. I'm just looking for engagement of substance. You can hate me or say bad things about me as long as you're like engaging substantively what I'm saying.
But I don't. But again, I don't think I think you've spent a lot of this time talking, and I've had a nice time, for the most part until now, which has been kind of a bummer because I thought you were a pretty cool guy for most of this. I still think you're a pretty cool guy. That was rude. I'm just feeling a little, a little hackles raised. But like, it feels a lot like, or sounds a lot like to me, that a big part of the thing you're mad about is people ascribing positions and intention to your project that you're explaining by ascribing intentions and positions to other people's work.
When do you think I've done that, or why do you feel that way? What have I done for that?
I mean, you literally referred to me as a bad faith actor and said you hate people like me because you're describing the video in which we talked about you a little bit, and people got mad, and I was flippant, admittedly flippant.
Wait, there's nothing wrong with what I just said. I said, I don't like you people. I hate you people because of a video that I just watched, because of a behavior that you exhibited, that you admitted you did. There's nothing wrong with that. If you were to say, I hate you because you said this thing on a particular thing, okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Except that you have me right in front of you to have these conversations out. And instead of engaging with me, the guy, you're engaging with the made-up version of me, the guy, based off of a clip from a YouTube video. Like, I'm right here. We did talk about that claim.
We are, but you're not here because I just wanted to randomly talk to you for no reason. It was because of the claims made in this video that were made yesterday. So of course I'm going to like have questions about the claims made in this video yesterday.
You can talk about the claims, but right now it just seems like all you're doing is being like, I'm good, you're bad, because I'm Destiny and you're a different guy. Like,
wait, you just summarized my issue with you and tied it back to the substance of the video doing. What does this have to do with who either of us are?
Because I'm happy to talk to you about the video, right? But like, you're not talking about the video, you're talking about other stuff, and then whenever you don't like this, what I'm saying, but you made this video.
I don't know. Like, you literally, like, you correctly summarized my issue 1 minute ago, and now you're pretending like you don't understand my issues. I'm not talking about other stuff. I just gave you some focused critiques of things that you guys said about me in the video.
When we talked about a bunch of others, this has been a wide-ranging conversation. We've talked about a bunch of things.
Yeah.
And consistently, what happens is, when you don't like the position, or when you're trying to articulate a counter position, instead of engaging me directly, you just engage the video.
I think of it. Okay, I understand that it's when I say it's hard to keep track of a conversation, I'm not insulting you. I have trouble with it sometimes because I forget things. Can you think of? Is there a time where I haven't engaged with something that you've said directly? Or you think I'm avoiding something that you've said directly?
When I've talked about sort of claims like, when I've talked about sort of claims along the lines of the intent of structural critique as an opposition to pure bad faith, you just go, there's the video. Look at the video. But I'm here to happily have a good faith conversation about this. No problem at all. And like, we don't have to go to the tape. We don't have to fucking NFL replay this shit. We can just be like, okay, you made that claim. We engaged that claim, and I'm happy to walk that back. You're right. That wasn't what you were doing. I was being flippant. That happens. That's sort of the nature of things.
Sure, and that's fine, but that's fine too. If you think that like you were being flippant in the video and you thought the analysis that was unfair comparing me to a sophist or whatever, well then that's fine. I was like, okay, yeah, but then I guess I've done videos where I've said dumb shit or I was wrong about something or I didn't. That's fine. But then you can't like defend the. But then you can't defend any of the content rather than saying like, oh well, I didn't say that or I didn't mean that or I didn't know that or.
I can still defend the core argument that I think online debate is silly. Even if I think that the way that I handled that moment was flippant.
Sure. Do you think that if we were to go back and replay the entire thing, do you think that the take overall would feel like, oh yeah, like this guy seems to think that like online debate is silly, or do you think the take would be way more strong than that? Would be more. Yeah, would have way more weight. Like, it's a waste of time. People are self-aggrandizing. They only do it for money. They don't care about any of the actual arguments. They don't care about any of the facts. Would it be the former? They're just silly, or would it be the latter?
Go back to the stuff that I said, would probably be a lot more the former about it being silly.
Okay. And I'll admit again for the like fourth or fifth time, it might be that I'm ascribing to you a lot of what your co-host said on this, which is possible.
But this is part of why. I guess this is an okay way to sort of semi-tie this up. Is like, this is part of why I think it's silly, right? Like, this is part of why I think it is silly. Is that there is this process by which these conversations become like sort of inevitably recursive discussions about the discussion being had. Because that's, the way you're characterizing the Finkelstein thing, accurate or not, is that as well. And that's happening to us right now. That happens on all kinds of stuff like this. They end up being recursive to conversations about the conversation.
Yeah, and I agree that I think that's bad. I agree with you there. But my contention is that, like, all of this would have been avoided if the video that you guys had was like a substantive critique of anything I'd said, and more than just a meta-analysis of like, I'm a bad faith grifter who isn't principled.
I don't mean to be rude, but as far as things about that video that I give a shit about, you were very low on the list.
That's fine,
the video that video is about, that video is focusing on, that those videos are identifying and engaging with, are online debate as a practice abstracted from you or any other person. There's a reason why in that video, when I talk about this stuff, more often than I reference you and a bunch of other guys. Because the thing that I give a shit about is not you. You seem nice.
I'm literally like in the description of the video on the top before the cutoff.
That's fine, but you're not talking to the people who write the description. You're talking to me, the guy in a 30-minute chunk, to talk specifically about the nature of debate as an activity, right?
What was one other person you brought up in this besides me and Hasan talking about me?
In that video, I talk about Hasan, I talk about Ethan Klein, I talk about you. There's someone else I mentioned. I think Alex Jones or Joe Rogan. Like,
I think there's one sentence where you mention a couple of them, but most of it is through. But I mean, maybe our impression is different. Maybe I'm more sensitive because you.
Most of it is abstracted beyond the question of any individual person. Period. When I'm talking, because I don't care about these people. I mean, I care about those people. I hope you all are happy, healthy, and have a good time. I want that for everyone.
I think that's fair. By the way, I think that's fair too, to say like I don't care. Like I'm okay with people thinking that too, but then it's just like, well, just don't talk about me then. Why like do these weird comparisons to me as like a sophist who could never live up to the Socratic expectation of other.
I didn't make that comparison. The thing I said is this activity as a whole ends up being sophistry, which is true. Look what we're doing right now. But like. And I, again, in the video, make the claim pretty specifically that that's fine if you like it, but that ascribing to it a grander sort of, this is a good way to adjudicate or understand ideas in a bigger sense is not, to me, a true claim. I think like we were saying, to rewind a little bit, that when we talk about this in terms of being an ad or a gateway to bigger ideas, to political action, to stuff like that, that's a good characterization. That's if, for instance, in a hypothetical world, the clip with the Hasan thing, your response had been less about defending debate as a practice and more about, look who gives a shit if it's dumb. I get 10,000 people to come on and watch the show, and then I tell them all to go knock doors, and 10% of them do, and that's 1,000 people knocking doors who wouldn't have otherwise.
Sure. To be clear, hold on. That's not even my position. That's just like one side of it. I think that having debates between people is important. I think if you believe in a particular idea, you should be able to argue it against somebody else. I think that people are influenced by that. That when you have a particular belief and you see that like nobody else that has that belief is capable of defending it, I think that bothers some people. So I think that being able to have debates and conversations are important. It fleshes out ideas more sometimes than it would just yourself.
I agree that the active conversation is important. I think this has been fun. I've learned some things. I have found some interesting inroads to ideas. Absolutely. But I don't think that they have as specially compelling intellectual rigor or legitimacy as compared to other forms of knowledge acquisition. And I think the things that make them good and special, and the thing that for which I would say, to finish the fake alternate universe example I was giving, if that had happened and Burns had been like, get a load of this doofus, I would have been like, Burns, this is good. You know, like, how does that? No, I think this is a good thing to do. But that's not what happened, right? That's the point that I'm making. I disagree with the idea that of the many ways that people can have inroads to intellectual sort of engagement, that this is a particularly good one. Like I said, if other people do like it and it has a bigger effect than I anticipate, and that more people are hearing these conversations and hearing me talk about performance theory, go look that up, and hearing us talk about different policing models, look that up, and look up, Scandinavian models of tax distribution, because we were talking about margin stuff earlier.
When you cite people like Marx or Engels or Socrates, or you guys are talking about these, like, isn't dialectics like a back and forth argument? Isn't it like a huge part of like how they would even, like, some of their stuff was written?
Yeah, but that's right. But dialectical engagement yes. Actually, yes. And if dialectical engagement were the core sort of end game of these kind of things, I would fucking have posters. But like, that's not what happens. Right?
I agree. I agree, and we both agree there. I hope that in the future, I just hope you guys do that. So when I say something, or if I'm the lens of analysis, like, engage dialectically. If I make an argument, rather than invent a weird straw man racist guy who is a sophist, then say like, oh, here's the thing that Destiny said in here and here and here. Here's our engagement with it. We disagree because of this, this, and this. That would be so much better. You're
describing the thing that happened. You're just analyzing it through a very sort of like myopic function, right? Because the thing that the claim you made that we were engaging with is that online debate is good for this stuff, right? And our claim that we were making is no, it is not.
I don't know. I don't believe that's.
And we're engaging that claim directly with actual arguments, with claims, and with analysis.
But just
the thing that you're responding to is like,
you literally say in this video, I don't believe Destiny has a principled engagement with anything that he says. How could you have that opinion without even knowing anything I've said? There's no substantive engagement there. It's just like, it's literally an ad-hom. Like,
I don't. Okay, first of all, I think we can drop the whole like it's literally an ad hoc thing if we're going to be like civility politics don't matter to me.
Wait, hold on. You said you wait, real quick. Hold on. I'm only leaning on this because you said you were like a master fucking debate coach, and ad hom has nothing to do with civility politics.
I know.
And ad hom is when you're dismissing my argument with a character tag. Okay, go. Okay.
You didn't even let me get to the part about how you're dismissing stuff by describing me as a bad faith actor. That was the point I was getting to. You gotta at least let me get to the period, my man. Like,
wait, do you think me describing you as a bad faith actor is an ad hom? If I'm not...
No, I think it's well, it's an ad hom to the degree that it's a dismissal based on like a baseless supposition, the same way that having no principle is the baseless supposition.
No. If I've demonstrated that I feel like you're acting in bad faith, and then I'm saying your arguments don't seem to be working because I think you're acting in bad faith, and I've given examples of that, I've justified that position. That's not an ad hom. I'm not just attacking your character to dismiss something. If you want to attack if you want to think that me not being principled isn't an ad hom, then you would have to justify it. You have to demonstrate, like, oh, well, here's a way in which he's not like satisfying, his principles or something.
Well, I've made a couple of claims in that direction, although I don't super want to get into that. But like, I've made a couple of claims in that direction that I don't think some of the positions you take as policy are in line with like the base goal of equitable distribution. But that's not like, again, they said I don't have time or interest in doing that right this second. If you'd like to do this again sometime and plan it for not the middle of my workday, the day before I go camping, I'd be happy to do it. I'd love to come back and do this again.
Okay.
But like,
then when you say like, I think that Destiny doesn't have any first principles and that he's narcissistic, that was just like, you don't actually stand by that. That was just you being flippant.
I don't think I said that.
I'm literally looking at the transcript.
Did I say that or did Burns say that?
I don't know. I don't believe Destiny really has any first principles and he's pretty narcissistic. So
I don't believe Destiny has any first principles and he's pretty narcissistic, unless there's another guy that sounds like you in the background of this video. Yeah.
I am pretty confident Burns said that, but if I said that, then I think what I'll stand by is, the first principles thing. I think that there is sort of a gap between some of the stuff that you believe in and talk about and a first principle of like broad Rawlsian equity. However, I will also say, to your credit, that you've clarified a first principle or a series of principles that are distinct from the ones that I had either seen you articulate or seen other people frame your articulation as. Oh, it could also have been Henry. There's a third guy on the show.
Okay, there might have been. That could be too. By the way, I don't know. I'm assuming that the other guy talking all the time is you. Maybe it was a different guy.
If I'm going to defend the position, if I'm going to defend the position, I will say that there is a disjunct there, at least in my assessment, of a goal of broader equity. But to your credit, you've said that like maybe that's not that your analysis of how history works is not one that's in line with that, and so to you that those things aren't disjointed, so that's fine, whatever. And the narcissism thing, I think that's kind of bearing itself out a little bit because you're taking a video where the vast majority of the video is about debate as a concept and being like, why is everyone so mean to me? Which, like, I understand.
Hold on, wait. Do you think that my complaint? Wait. Do you think my complaint at any of this is people being mean to me?
No, I'm being reductive because I'm being a little cranky. The actual argument that you're making is that you think that people are analyzing without rigor the sort of debate frameworks that you're engaging with, and that you think that there's frameworks deserve a greater degree of rigor before like dismissing the practice or your articulation.
It's in there then, at least. That's good. Okay.
Right. I know what's happening, but like the point that I am making is that there is a very myopic thing happening here that is dismissing the sort of actual point of at least my appearance on the stream and my part of the stream, which is very much about debate the activity, and making it about how Destiny does debate, which is a little, if not narcissistic, because the reason I don't think I said that is I really don't like throwing DSM words around because I have some problems that people misarticulate diagnosis-wise all the time, and it makes me very uncomfortable. So I don't imagine that was me, but it could have been. Who knows? But either way, it's because you're framing this whole thing in terms of you and your relation to the thing, when the content of the thing, for the most part, isn't about that, right?
We've circled on this argument. Yeah, that would be fine if that was the case. But when I become the subject that you analyze this through, of course I'm going, and the audience is going to interpret everything as that way, right?
But that's not what happened, right? There's a lot of that where I don't mention you at all. I just talk about debate in the abstract.
That's fine. Now, that may be for you particularly, but there's literally a whole clip of a Wired interview here where this Burns guy shouts out his cousin-in-law or whatever, where Hasan is just shitting on me. And like, I mean, maybe it's not really about me. I just happen to be getting brought up over and over again, and then uses the disfavorable comparison. But
look, if to the degree, I'm not going to defend or undercut Burns because he's not here and I wasn't there. I was, I think, walking my dogs. But to the degree that's true, part of that is that, like, you have, for better or worse, and congratulations to you, it seems like this is sort of part of what it means to be Destiny, have become kind of the flagship poster child of this activity as it exists.
But it's because of people like you that do bad faith analysis of it.
I don't think
I put in more research for my debates than every video essayist you've ever, well, not maybe not all, but any political one, absolutely, like guaranteed. But because I do debate, it's like somehow it's like a joke meme. But like these other guys that will read like a 10-minute like Wikipedia article on the Gaza Strip are now doing like 20-minute videos on the conditions in Palestine. They're like making these videos like, oh well, these guys are serious, they're video essayists, but this guy's a joke because he just does like debates. So it's like that. It doesn't even make sense. Like the substance, there's no substantive critique there.
To be frank, I don't like the shallow video essays either. If you want to have me back on to talk about how much I don't like those, I'll do that too. I think they suck. It makes my life harder because we make extremely intensely researched video essays that no one cares about. So I get it. I understand that there is a research gap there, and I'm sure that there's some degree of a perception gap because of the way the debate comes across, and because also, for better or worse, I think part of the reason why it's as pervasive as it is and has effective its spread as it is, also is part of the reason why it's treated the way it is that it's extremely clippable, right? Like that's the thing, right? Like if you're working in a medium and producing in a medium, that's extremely clippable, and like that means that clips are going to get out that are not going to have full context, like, and those are going to be discussed. I don't think, and like I again can't speak to the selection process for the stream because that wasn't my fucking job, but like. Part of the reason I think a bigger part of the reason you're the flagship for that than like people bringing on debate experts to talk about the idea of debate is probably a lot less responsible for your position that way than the fact that it's really easy to make a 60-second TikTok of you saying something that sounds crazy, right? Like, I think that has a lot more to do with it than the existence of other videos.
Sure. And I would hope more from content creators than to rely on 60-second video clips when we all know that you can make a 60-second clip of anybody saying anything.
But I don't think, aside from my admittedly flippant reaction, I don't think characterizing you as saying debate is important in that clip is a mischaracterization, right?
It is when I say debate is important and you're saying, well, he's trying to be like a founding father who's a narcissist with no principles.
Again, Jesus, okay.
Like if somebody wanted to make a video where they're like, Destiny says debate is important because of these like 3 or 4 reasons, let's go through them and attack them. Rather than Destiny said debate is important, I think it's because he's a narcissistic asshole who just like has this appealing and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, well, you're not engaging.
Again, the content of the video is not that, right? The content of the video is much more largely me being like, well, the problem with online debate is that it has a performativity aspect.
You might say that at the end, but in this, at least I only watched this 35-second or 35-minute video.
Yeah. Most of the video.
Okay, so in this 35-minute chunk where I thought you were in the background, but maybe it's not you, maybe it's the Henry guy. This is the only part of it. So maybe you say all of that in the end, but there was no good analysis in this 35-minute like middle chunk.
I'm not on the screen. I wasn't there.
You're not speaking in the background for any of this? It's only when you're on the screen?
No, I'm on screen the whole time that I'm there.
So you're not speaking at all on the subject of debate?
I am. No, there's a part of the video where I show up and talk about what debate is.
Oh,
where
okay.
You can see me in the video.
Oh yeah, I see. Okay. Well, then in that case, I don't know why. Why are you coming on to? What are we even arguing about then?
Well, first of all, because I thought you watched the whole video, and second of all, because you wanted to talk about why I don't think debates are good, which I still don't.
Okay.
I'll admit that. Why I don't think they're good quad. Why debate's good quad debate. I do think, like I said before, that debate as like an ad for further political action is good. I want to keep flagging that because I do think that's true, and I do think that the degree to which that happens out of stuff like this is very good. But see, this is like, now, to be fair, now who is acting in bad faith, right? Like you watched the video that I appear in, did not watch the part of it I was in, and then have been characterizing my arguments constantly this whole time. You didn't even watch the video.
Hold on. When you say I'm acting in bad faith there, what do you mean when you say that?
What I mean when I say that is that you're
You understand that I've said like 5 different times at least, I've only seen this 35-minute chunk. Maybe it wasn't you who said that, and that I'm reading transcripts from the actual video, and that you seem to not remember if you said these things or not. I've checked with you in like 3 different ways.
But it sounds like the reason I keep saying I don't think I said that is it turns out I didn't say it.
That the onus is on you there. I don't know what your voice. I've never heard of you from before today. I don't know what your voice sounds like. I don't know who Henry is. I don't know. Yeah, I've said multiple times. I was like, maybe your co-host said that. So I'm assuming that you would defend it, or maybe like you said this here. I see it in the transcript, and I've listened to it. Maybe it's your voice. And now for the first time, you've told me, oh well, only the parts where I'm on the screen. And I've also said multiple times, I only watched this 35-minute chunk in the middle. Maybe you say that at the end. I've said this like 3 times, or I'm sorry, I've said those 3 points like 5 times.
Right, but that's what right, and I kept saying that at the end of the video, I say a bunch of stuff, and then I'm on for half an hour to talk about debate, specifically about the idea of debate. And then you keep saying that I'm not doing that. And then it turns out
I said I didn't hear you do that in this part. Maybe you say it at the end. I literally said that. Like all you have to say, if you don't agree with any of this, you just say, oh, I don't agree with any of those things. I must not have said that. Rather than, because you've been arguing on behalf of all these things basically for the entire government. Or you're saying, oh, my partner said that. It's like, oh, okay, then we don't talk about that. I am trying to hold you to any view that you don't have. I've checked with you constantly on all of these things.
Right, well, that's... Sorry, I was assuming, and I guess, outside of you and me, that you had watched the part of the video that I was just talking about. Which, I guess I was wrong, which, like, whoops. But I was acting on that assumption, and because, like I said, I chucked off a 30-minute stream in the middle of a busy workday, I did not remember everything that I said or the way I framed everything. And so, if that's true, I'm assuming that, you as a good faith operator, you as an engaged conversation partner, were aware of this because you would watch the whole video.
Then why did you defend any of the positions if you didn't say any of these things then?
Yeah, kind of for fun, but also because I still agree with like the idea of...
Wait, if you agree with the idea of it all then it doesn't matter whether you said it or not. The positions are being accurately represented regardless.
No. Because this is where I kept pushing back on you, as I kept pushing back on, this isn't about you, I'm talking about debate in general. You kept saying you're talking about me, I kept saying I don't think that's true, and then, now it turns out that it wasn't true, because the parts that you were characterizing as me talking about you were neither me nor about you. I think, like...
That's why I'm asking you if you said this thing, and you're saying, well, maybe I did. How do you not remember any... This video was yesterday. You don't remember anything you said in this conversation? Why did you even offer to come on here if you have no idea, like, what, if you didn't even...
Because I thought you were going to talk about the ideas that we talked about in the idea segment of the conversation. That you apparently didn't watch and are mad about.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm pretty sure I said pretty much exactly what we were going to talk about here. I watched this exact section. I told you, but okay, yeah, maybe...
I don't know what 35-minute chunk you're talking about, though. Like, there's any 35-minute chunk, and then you were like... We can talk about this, and I kept saying, I talked at the end about all this stuff. I talked like almost exclusively about the idea of debate. I want to talk to you about the idea of debate. I said this a bunch of times.
No, hold on. To be clear, that's not true. When I asked you to further these things where it's like, oh, like for instance, when I asked you about the principles thing, you immediately responded. You're like, oh, well, what about like your position on like donating to police officers? It seems like that's incongruent with this other thing. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess you do believe in that thing. Or when I asked you like, oh, what are examples where you feel like I'm not engaging with an argument well? And you're like, oh, well, what about for the Finkelstein debate? You didn't engage there. So it seems like you believe all these things, but now you don't want to because this section of it wasn't actually you talking. It was just a guy speaking that you also agree with all of his criticisms, but now you don't want to go sign them because you didn't say them, or?
No. Come on. Now you're being silly. Like, first of all, I did have reservations and spoken reservations about the no principles thing, but then asked you about it because I was curious, because I have heard this before and I have had dissonant reactions to your shit, although I don't have a strong enough position to know for sure. So I wanted to ask you about them. That seems pretty normal. And then second of all, with the fucking Finkelstein thing, I did reference the Finkelstein thing in that video, so I thought you were talking about it.
Wait, so when you said, so did you reference the founding fathers at all, or was that just Henry and you just said that was you the whole time for memes?
No, I made a reference to the founding fathers thing. I don't know if it was the same one that Henry made, but I did make a reference to the founding fathers thing. That also did happen.
Okay, then it seems like you guys largely agreed on everything anyway. So regardless of which of the three of you on the show were saying anything, it seems like you more or less co-sign each other's opinions then.
No, I think not really, right? Because you're characterizing a lot of the work you've done, sort of from an argument perspective, is characterizing my appearance on the stream, the positions that I take on the stream, as being centered around you as a lens, when, as I've been trying to insist this whole time, and is kind of bearing itself out right now, like, is in fact not the case. The case is that the thing that the bad faith that you're articulating, this sort of like, you don't know about my shit, so why are you criticizing me, wasn't actually happening. Like, I've been trying to push back on this whole time because I've been trying to talk about debate in the abstract as an activity, right? Which is what happened in the video. Like, and I have been articulating that particular pushback pretty consistently this whole time. That I do remember, because my memory is not that bad. But like, that has been happening throughout this video. That's been me being like, actually, this isn't really about your shit. I was talking about debate as the activity. I'd rather focus on that. Like, that has been happening. I've been trying to bring the conversation back to that a bunch because that's the goal.
All right.
So, like,
yeah, I mean, I think listen, if Burns wants to chat then, or the Henry guy wants to chat then, I mean, either of them would be interesting. I'll do it on their program if they want, or you guys program if you want. Otherwise, I don't have anything else. I just lay off the weed. I feel like you're probably smoking too much, but
I haven't smoked weed in 3 days. I'll have you know. I've just had 7 concussions in my life.
Okay.
But also, I think that my characterization of my relation to that stuff was pretty clear. I don't remember it, but I'll see what happens if I get engaged with it. I didn't defend any of it explicitly. Like I told you, I didn't want to, because I did make a joke about the Founding Fathers. That's true. And I did reference the Finkelstein thing. So those 2 checked out. The narcissism thing was just like, well, maybe I forgot that I said that.
Okay, just to be clear, when you say you reference the Finkelstein thing, you were the one that brought that up in this conversation. I asked you for an example of like something where you feel like
No. I know. But then we were talking about in relation to the stream, and that did happen. So like, I'm not here to like dodge. Like, I'm willing to own up to the stuff that did happen. Like that did occur. But my point being that I thought we were just going to talk about debate as an activity because that's what I did on the video, because that's what's interesting to me. And that's why I thought this would be interesting. And it was interesting when we were doing that. I liked it. I had a good time. But like this sort of more specific, like how does Destiny fit in all of this, was sort of a surprise to me because that didn't have a ton to do with like the stuff I was doing on the stream. But I was happy to engage it because it's interesting to talk to people. And it's fascinating to me where you're coming from and to understand your reaction to that stuff, because it's not a fake idea that people characterize you in certain ways, that you exist in digital space and public space in a certain way, and that engagement seems interesting.
Okay. Yeah, well, anything else?
Not really, but if you ever want to have me back for any of the other stuff that I mentioned, I'll be happy to talk to you about. You know where to find me now.
All right. Yeah, same thing to you. Have fun. Be careful.
All right. Yeah, you have fun out there. Talk to you all later.
He must be Smoker, right?
I'm curious in the chat or if anyone
on but the whole point is I'm right, and then he starts getting mad about like all the price tags on Hasan's things. And
so this is Henry right here. This is Henry talking, I guess.
I don't know. I don't believe Destiny really has any first principles, and he's pretty narcissistic. So this was like, Jesus, I expected this, but just to hear it and see.
That's Henry?
Yeah, like, ouch.
And then this is him. Hold on.
Disneyland, and I did better than I expected. And some of the older people on the debate team were like, hey, you're good at this. Here's a weird secret. We can get into this.
They sound like they're using different mics. I think they're different, right?
Rushing through and speaking. This whole thing's
they're different. This is different mics. Okay, so this is a different guy.
It's been going on for like the past like 5-6.
At Piker's comments, yeah, he says it's not about
same voice. It doesn't matter if the voice is the same. The mics are different, so it's clearly 2 different people. How could he come on and how would he not realize? Like, oh, I'm reading a transcript. I'm reading his code. He's like, I don't know if I said that. This was yesterday at 35:33. He names him. Jesus Christ.
To tell you about why socialism is the best thing ever. Like that.
Okay. Well, that was something. Here's always with producer Henry.
Yeah, with producer Henry. This is Henry.
Henry, I'm curious. Your initial reaction to, I guess, Hasan Piker's comments and then Destiny's reaction.
Why was he listening to it at double speed or like 1.5 speed? Like
he was.
Why did this guy even come onto my stream? I'm so mind fucked right now. Why did he even come on here? What? Fuck it. Okay, well, let's listen to what he actually says in the end. And before he ends up saying basically the same shit. Let's see.
Michael Luxembourg now. You guys know Lux. He's, one of the main creative forces behind everything we do here at Wisecrack, as well as a creative force in the improv, comedy, wrestling, creative scene in Austin, Texas, and does a lot of other stuff at our cool parent company that we like.
I bet I'm going to watch this, and he's going to agree with every single thing they've said, and he's going to say even stronger statements. That's my guess. Maybe it won't happen, though. Let's find out.
And Lux, glad to have you here. I assume we're bringing him in. And wanted to talk to Lux about this because Lux is someone who is a very smart person. And Lux is smart in a cool way that I'm not smart in. And I'll tell you maybe one reason if we can interrogate my motives. A reason I've always been suspect about debate is because I'm bad at it. I'm someone that needs to step back and like consider ideas, and I notice things. I don't know if any of you are like this, where you're in an argument with someone and you leave, and 10 minutes later you're like, I should have said. Well, Lux is the sort of person who says the thing right in the moment, and is also someone who's been a debate coach. Lux, you're here.
Yeah, I certainly am.
Okay, so let's start with this, Lux. Tell me a little bit and tell everyone.
I don't want to be. I feel like if I say anything here, it's going to come across as really mean. So I'm not going to say anything.
And who's here? What is your background as someone that not just is like a smart dude, but that is formally participated in debate?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I was, I think, the 6th or 7th ranked debater in America.
Whoa!
When I was a senior in high school, and then actually, this is also how I got this job. I got a scholarship to college to do this or to do debate stuff, and they fired the guy who was supposed to be the debate coach, the guy who had recruited me. So I didn't want to participate in the activity anymore because they had sort of boned me on that. And then my sophomore year of college, they hired me as an assistant coach for the new coaches who were there, and that's actually how I met Alec Opperman.
Hold on, let me grab a sippy. Sorry, one second.
Former godfather of Wisecrack.
Yeah, former Wisecrack lead writer. He was debating at the new school, even though he's older than me. But he was debating at the new school, and he would always debate the kids I was coaching, and I would always tech them out with really interesting arguments, and he would win because he was clever. And we got to talking because I'd be like, "Oh, you did a really good job answering this argument." And Alec would be like, "Well, it was a pretty cool kind of thing, kind of argument you guys came up with." We started just talking about that, and emailing arguments back and forth, and chatting that way, and that's how we became friends.
This feels like mean. I don't normally like do like call people liars. I don't believe this guy was ever a nationally ranked high school debate guy. I don't believe so. Like if Rob Knorr were to tell me that, I would believe that immediately. If Pisco were to tell me that, I would believe that. I don't believe this guy at all, unless he suffered like severe cognitive impairment or damage between like now and high school. I don't think so.
And that's how I ended up here. So yeah, then I coached 3 years of college debate and debated 4 years in high school at a pretty high.
Hold on. People are saying that he had concussions, but he wasn't. He's brought in as somebody who is a debate expert, and he cites his high school debate experience, and then he's talking about it. So to say, but also I have concussions, so it erased all. It doesn't really make sense. Like what? Like
high level, and then instead of pursuing debate after college, decided to go make videos instead.
Hell yeah. So when you were participating.
Wait, even your tweet is in reference specifically to their characterization of you. Why did they bring up? Oh, I don't know. Did I? Well, I don't even remember what my tweets were. The omni-liberal. I'm going over your shitty review on stream for the next hour if you want to hop on and chat. Oh, I said I'm going over. I don't think I said anything more specific than this, though, did I?
Debate. I wonder, like, what did you, when you started debating in a serious way, what balance of motive was like, I want to be the smartest boy. I want to spend time exploring ideas. I want to understand argumentative structure in a formal way. Like, what would you say is your motive for getting into it?
Oh boy. Okay. So this is not going to reflect well on me.
No, it's okay. But we understand. We all grow as people, So it's
So I was a freshman in high school. My brother, I was a top 10 national debater. My brother was decisively number one in his time of doing it. He was one of the best to do it.
To be fair, you didn't really refute any of the claims the guy had. He had some valid arguments. Name one.
And so I initially wasn't going to. I was just going to be a theater kid in high school. That was sort of my trajectory. And the debate team was like, look, we need someone to come to this tournament with us. Your brother did it. Would you just mind trying it out? We'll fly you to LA because it's a tournament in LA, and we'll pay for you to go to Disneyland if you'll just debate at this one tournament. So I did that because I wanted to go to Disneyland, and I did better than I expected. And some of the older people on the debate team were like, hey, you're good at this. Here's a weird secret. We can get into this detail if we feel like maybe this is for a different stream. They were like, did you know that all the good debaters all party together and people will give you free drugs and beers and shit if you're just hanging out? And I was like 15, and I was like, well, that's a good deal. So then I was like, I guess I should get good at this. So I get all this free stuff and party with these weird smart people. So then I decided to do it. And it turned out that I was creative and good at it. And then I started to have fun being kind of a trolly little weirdo. And
I don't believe this. I don't believe any of this story.
And that's sort of how it happened. Because I mean, I guess to talk about the intellectual element of it, debate is a game with rules, and I, as Burns and Henry are probably both very aware, am a rules-averse person. I don't like them.
You're not a rules guy.
I take great pleasure in breaking them whenever possible. And so a lot of my debate approach and what I enjoyed about it was playing the game of debate in as tricky and truly and rule-skirting way as possible. This is why there are people to this day who will say that my brother and I ruined the activity of policy debate because my brother started this using rhetorical critiques written by people like based on works like Foucault, Chaloupka, Baudrillard to make arguments about the assumptions of people's debate propositions. And I took that one step in a different direction where I use those arguments to critique the idea of doing debate or having debates. And so basically what we would do is cheat at debate, and the other team would either have to let us cheat or say, you're cheating, that's bad. And we would go, no, cheating is good. And that would be how we would win. Either by cheating and they'd let us get away with it, or they tried to stop us from cheating, and that was like the debate we wanted to have, was cheating good or bad.
Wow. Well, at some point you need to write a...
like, this is where it would be very uncomfortable. This is where I would say, like, oh, can you give me, like, an example of this in a debate?
A book about what it was like to be one of the bad boys of debate. Well, so here's a question I have. So obviously we've been talking about debate in the context of, Hasan Piker's recent comments, some of the debate culture stuff around Destiny and that sort of thing. And I think we've been talking about, and something I know that we've talked about before, Lux, is the importance, or maybe...
Okay, so he brings up my name directly. Wait, somebody linked me a past link. Hold on.
Lux, but you go ahead.
Yeah, so two other things. One, Fat Cat, you say that he's left, just as not far left. I have yet to understand a first principle of Destiny's politics. If someone can articulate to me what he thinks a good world looks like, that's very chill.
Wait, why not just watch a single full thing instead of a clip then? This is apparently a month ago, on April 1st, almost 2 months ago?
Yeah.
He just never does that.
So, like, this is my issue. And I say this a lot, and I hedge, and I sound like a cuck when I hedge, so maybe people don't want to sound like it, but I was like, I've never heard this before. I've never heard this guy say this. I haven't heard this before. Rather than making the declarative statement of, like, the truth claim of, like, he has never done this. Like, I'm no longer saying I haven't seen it. I'm saying he doesn't do this. He hasn't done this, right? Like, this is, and again, like, maybe I'm ascribing, maybe I just give everybody too much credit. I don't know. If you're telling me you were like a 6th place national debater, I would expect you to know the difference between those two claims, right? It is a significantly different claim to say, I haven't seen a thing, where you might be agnostic towards a particular belief versus like this thing doesn't exist. Whereas you're giving like a more concrete, you're making like an actual claim about a thing existing, right? These are two vastly different things.
As far as I can tell from what I have seen. However...
Oh, hold on. He kind of stated at the end there. He said, from what I have seen. Okay. I'll let him, he hedged a bit. I'll give him that.
Never does that. As far as I can tell from what I have seen. However...
There was a world when I was considering... And sorry, I'll pass the ball to you right after this, Henry. When there was a world last week, I was like, yeah, maybe I will hit him up and just like see if he wants to chat. Because that's 100% Lux, the thing that I would be curious about. Like, because in watching that debate with Jordan Peterson, and this is something that people completely lost. And this isn't me just like criticizing the critics, but like, people in the comments to that stream acted as if I spent 2 hours critiquing Destiny when I did not at all. That entire stream is critiquing Jordan Peterson, and most of it is me being like, oh yeah, that was a good question Destiny asked about climate change. That was a good question he asked about, the relationship between the left and science and vaccines. The thing that was so confusing for me, and this gets back to Lux's point about political principles, I'm confused by someone who in so many ways says stuff. It's like, yeah, that is fair. That is right. That is something most folks agree with. And then has some takes from like, where is this coming from? And it sort of does seem to convey a lack of or an inconsistency of first principles. And I do know, to take him very seriously.
This is so fascinating. It's crazy because this guy has done a bit of work, but he's like literally working in the wrong direction. Like it feels like he's putting in effort to be stupid. That's crazy to me. Where, like one of the things that I point out is that people have these huge like interlinked systems of belief that they don't spend any time actually figuring out like, why do I think this particular thing? So when you run into somebody that has a different belief, then you're like, wait a second, like this doesn't make sense. Like, how can you believe that and this when I believe that, but not that? That's and then he's like using words like first principles. And it's like, well, hold on, then you should understand that we might have a slightly different principle. Like, is it really inconceivable that a different set of principles could generate a lot of similar conclusions? Is that completely inconceivable to you?
A thing that Destiny said in that conversation last debate with Jordan Peterson is that he doesn't think that first political principles are actually a thing. He thinks that political ideas are shaped by communities of participation, so that most of our...
Oh, he even is understanding like a thing that, okay, he's getting my take on this. Okay, let's listen. I'm so curious.
Political ideals and cultural ideals are not shaped by that sort of thing, but are instead shaped by the communities in which we participate in. I don't think that that's wholly wrong. And I think that, to be honest, I think some of the responses and conversations we've had in the past week show the truth of that. But I'm very hesitant to say that universally political identity and ideology is community-based. But Henry, I know I boxed you out a second ago, so go for it.
Oh, we didn't connect anything. Okay.
Yeah, just on the question of principles, it always struck me as weird the way he responded to FD Signifier with the 10K donation to the Atlanta Police Department out of spite. And just like
wait, can you give context for that, Henry? Just because I don't really know about that, and maybe some of the audience as well. So what happened?
So a while back, FD Signifier and Destiny were going to debate, but then for some reason there was like a delay on Destiny's end. And then at one point he didn't get back to FD fast enough. And so instead of giving to the anti-police organization that FD had specified, he did 10,000 to the Atlanta Police Department out of spite. This was like in May of 23. I want to say this was last year, but
this was after I think FD and I were going to debate, and he said, "Well, if Destiny wants to debate me, he needs to donate $10,000 to my little terrorist organization." And I was like, "Okay, whatever. Like, let's unblock me. Let's go." Or because I was blocked, and I was like, "Okay, let's do it." And then I think he unblocks me. I wish I could get like a concrete a proof of this because I don't have proof of the time. But from when I was checking his Twitter, I think he unblocked me and reblocked me. I want to say within 12 to 16 hours. It might have been within 24 hours. He said 25K at first. Oh, it might have been 25K at first. Maybe it was a couple days and I missed it, but he unblocked me apparently to have me DM him and then reblocked me, and he's like, "Oh, he didn't do it fast enough." I was like, "Oh, okay, well."
But I mean, as someone who doesn't follow Destiny constantly, or doesn't really keep up with debate streams, that just struck me as a.
It's also interesting that one of his examples of a thing he didn't like from me. This is like the simulacrum at play, by the way. One of the examples of a thing he didn't like from me is here. It came from another guy who's not even really summarizing the thing directly, which is why, not to sound like ass pained about all these people talking about me, because it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, people are going to talk about me, but I get ass pained when people slightly misrepresent me because it leads to these bigger and bigger games of telephone where I get increasingly misrepresented, in larger ways. And it's like, okay, Destiny just donated 10K to the police because he's spy driven, and it's like, oh, there's a larger story behind this, but.
Weird sort of instance of one of them actually doing something materially, and it sounding like what they were doing was motivated more out of it was the same personal petty kind of drama I expect from debate bros, but here it was with a $10K dollar sign on it, manifesting as a real world thing. And I don't know, it just strikes me as weird that he has fans that excuse that kind of stuff or don't think about that kind of stuff.
I want to respond to someone because someone pointed out that in
the
Peterson thing. So someone's basically saying, "Oh, he did define his political principles."
Wasn't it? It was the Crime Stoppers division, yeah. But these guys don't care because these guys are against, I think, the entire institution of policing. So.
At the beginning of that, I think, so to speak for Lex for a second, so he describes individual positions when he's like, "I'm in favor of X policy, I'm in favor of Y policy." That's one thing. I think what we're talking about is what are your first principles that motivate that? So for example, if someone's first principle is that, there is no fundamental equality and the stronger deserve to dominate, then that can motivate positions. If one's fundamental position is that there's an inherent equality to all of humanity that doesn't involve any sort of ability, strength, or whatever, then that can motivate positions, and so on and so forth. So I think that there's still a level deeper than someone just saying these are the policy positions that I agree with. And I think that's kind of
that's my thing. Also, really quick, I think it's a really good point and a relevant one from R. Messi, who sent a super chat. Shouts out to him or them.
Oh yeah, that was good.
Hello, I'm a longtime fan of a channel and a fan of political streamers, but I find that politics becomes entertainment as opposed to something real. I find that parasocial feelings become arguments. I 100% agree. This is the thing I've talked about a bunch on Twitter and with Burns, with other people I know, which is that I feel like there's a thing with politics where politics basically boils down to what do I think a better world looks like and what do I think is the best way to reach that world or get to that. That's the core question of what your politics are. And I think there's a lot of stuff that happens on the internet in terms of political debate and discussion that just skips that step entirely. That has nothing, that just does not engage with that question at all and boils it down to very sort of niche or specific issues at a time. But unless you're answering this question of what is a better world and how do you get there, what are we doing? What are we freaking doing here?
Yeah, I want to jump in just because I respond.
Okay. I 40% agree. Well, most online stuff is super performative, but that isn't limited to debate. That's true of almost everybody that engages in political action to some extent. Even people that are literally at protests to some extent. This isn't a unique issue relating to online debates, right?
Unimportance of having a set of first principles or a set of values that one is motivated by when debating. So could you speak to that a little bit? I'm curious what you think about the relationship between sort of the values of the debater and the context and the value of the debate itself, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, so this is sort of what about this? This is sort of my fundamental problem with online debate stuff, right? And I think Destiny actually inadvertently. So, do you guys talk about that video where Hasan was the Destiny played the Hasan clip where Hasan's like, debates are stupid, and,
yes.
and Destiny's like, what the fuck, and has a series of microstrokes.
That was our jumping off point.
Okay, so he did co-sign some of this in the beginning. He seems to have some. That's not what I said, but okay.
It was a series of microstrokes. In particular, the idea that Destiny's point seemed to be that debate has a directly political effect, and debate is the thing that shapes politics and yada yada yada.
Right. So the problem. So he makes this argument when he's having his like weird panic attack, is that the foundation of America was this question of like debating politics, debating ideas. So we figured out how to do about it. The degree to which that's true is dubious, but even if you assume it's totally true, that wasn't happening in front of an audience on the internet, right? And
Okay. Well, I feel like we're mapping on pretty close to what we said. So like the Federalist Papers and stuff, I'm pretty sure it was really important. This was happening not on the internet, but like in newspapers, right? To convince the population that like, hey, we need to unite as more than just like individual colonies, right? Also, the segment was barely about me, okay, but it feels like we're talking about me. It feels like most of what he said so far has been about me, but maybe as we go on, like, yeah.
The people who are doing these debates online aren't drilling down to first principles and aren't conveying a series of justified premise argument positions.
This is kind of weird that he's saying, and I don't know if it's like maybe he just read this and so he's holding on to it, or maybe he has this from his high school days. Like, first principles are important, but every single debate is not going to involve first principles. That would be exhausting. And you can even have disagreements on first principles, but you can still have like larger level, like applied conversations and have like reasonable conversations. So this obsession with like, they're not doing first principles. Like, you don't do that in every debate ever. You never do. Even in philosophy, you don't do that in every debate ever. Like, can you explain why you think he is stupid? I thought he was just sandbagging and trying to save face, but he was able to follow along fairly well with your case. Really? I feel like he wasn't able to take what I was saying and critically consider it at all. I feel like he was floundering when he was looking for examples. I feel like he was having trouble like meaningfully engaging when I would pose a question to him. I don't know. I just didn't feel like there was any part of that conversation. I was like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I see we disagree, but like you're like there are parts where there are times when I completely and totally disagree, like Rob Noor or P Scout. And I'm like, okay, they're following like a coherent, consistent, like argumentative structure. We might disagree on some of the underlying facts, but I don't have that feeling with him at all.
They're articulating sort of a brand identity, right? And they're trying to connect with their audience directly. And so while it is good to argue about ideas, I think we can vouch for this, that like a lot of the best Wisecrack videos are like you and me and Amanda arguing over like what's the best way to get at this concept we all think is interesting or whatever. And like that hones the idea and makes it stronger. I think that that's obviously true. I think that is good. Henry and I will argue about camera compositions when we're making movies. Like it's important to do that stuff. But we're not doing that performatively. And it's the performative aspect that then makes these online debates a lot less rigorous, right? You see this all the time. Destiny, I'm just gonna go to because he's a famous guy and
me again, okay.
And a perpetrator of this particular crime pretty regularly.
And he says that I do this regularly, okay. So he's making even stronger claims here than what were made earlier about me, but okay.
Will make factual claims, or factual claims, air quotes, pretty regularly.
And now he's claiming that I'm making factual claims that are not true, I guess?
That aren't true, but that
okay.
That aren't true or are without context.
And missing context. Oh, okay. So now he's implying that he's seen, I'll be very generous and say at least one example of each, even though he's using the plural, that he's seen at least one example of each of me giving an incorrect fact or giving a fact without the proper context. Okay.
When he does that, right, that's not an attempt to suss out a greater knowledge point. It's purely a persuasive project. And so the point of those debates isn't to figure out the best position or the best idea. It is to persuasively perform, right? To go back to my debate history, it's very stupid to make a policy proposal that the United States government should free all the aliens in Area 51, right? That's like a silly thing to present as a policy proposal. But because we couched it all these weird arguments about knowing the other and this weird Zimmerman article about what it means to meet aliens and how it create universal empathy, like it became persuasive. That doesn't mean it was a good idea. That was are you fucking kidding me? Dumb as shit. It's stupid to imagine Congress having that conversation. But it does.
I didn't follow. He's saying that even though you can make convincing arguments for a thing, it doesn't make the thing good. But then you would argue it on. He's literally saying the exact same thing. Yeah. But then you would just have better arguments on the other side of it, right? Like,
doesn't mean that. But the we would win because it's persuasive, right? And again, this isn't to say that these debates don't have some degree of educational value, but the fact that they're entertainment first kind of undercuts this idea that they're this fundamental pursuit of higher knowledge, right? And the other thing that these things are missing always is like a moderator or a judge, right? Like one thing about policy debate, as stupid as I think it is that there was a judge who would like vet the arguments and who would read the evidence and see if it actually says what they say it says, and would evaluate and adjudicate arguments against each other, et cetera, right? That was the job that they had. That doesn't happen on a Destiny versus Jordan Peterson debate. All that happens in that debate is their audiences watch and just react to what their guy says. There's no arbitration happening.
Well, and it makes me wonder as well, like, for example, we could use the, Destiny and Jordan Peterson debate as an example. What would a valuable debate look like? And I think in a sense, in internet spaces, whenever there's a debate that gets a lot of attention and hype, it's person.
Now, this is like the part that's the most disappointing to me, and it's even more disappointing because these guys, assuming he's about to not be an idiot or a total idiot, these guys are closer than most, is the bad faith engagement prohibits a lot of good conversations from actually happening. So like, I'm assuming what they're about to talk about, this is actually a really interesting thought, which is why don't we have judges for debates? Or is there any way that you could appeal to some third-party judge to actually fact check, actually verify, actually figure out, how to rate who won a debate? But the thing is it's funny because they're doing the exact same thing that laymen do when they have issues with research, where, a study will come out saying like, we did a project and we realized that men are more likely than women to die of a heart attack. And then somebody will say something like, oh, well, did they figure that, it's not even an example. I can't even think of it. It'll be like when somebody has an objection to a study and it's like the most obvious. Did they ever figure that like maybe the wives are stressing all the men out? That's why they're dying. Did they look at single men? Did they do did they do any kind of analysis of controls and variables and covariate and blah? And it's like, yeah, they probably did, bro. Like it's published in New England Journal of Medicine. They probably looked at this. Yes. So like this idea of like, what about judges or moderators? Like, yeah, no shit. People have thought about that, but it's a really hard thing to do. You can't just present that as like, oh, well, obviously if there was a moderator, now it's way better. Depending on the moderator, it might be way fucking worse. Would you want Dr. Robert Malone moderating a debate on the origination of COVID or the efficacy of mRNA vaccines? Probably not, but yeah, it's
on this side, debates person on this side, diametrically opposed, whatever, and this person says a thing, and this person says opposite thing, and this person says opposite thing, and at the end of it, it's like, you choose who won. To me, at least, what would be much more interesting is like this person who,
why was this guy so hung up on how the chat/audience was affecting the debate when public political debates have had audiences for thousands of years? These guys are citing Plato, Aristotle, etc. When these guys got famous in large part for the debates they had on the Athenian Agora. If I'm steelmanning his position, because he wasn't capable of speaking very well, the steelman is that if I'm combining his critique there with this desire for a judge, the problem is that when you have a debate publicly, the goal is to get the loudest claps. So if your goal is to get the loudest claps because the only judge you have is whoever gets the loudest round of applause from the audience, then what you're doing in a debate is you're trying to appeal to the sensibilities of the audience in a way that they'll cheer for you rather than adhering to any criteria that would be evaluated by a judge. I think that was the point that he was trying to express, basically.
There's one set of ideas. Debates
which, ironically enough, I've actually said the exact same thing when I said I believe that presidential debates in the United States shouldn't have audiences, because when people hear people clap, they instantly assume the audience is that the person made a better point, and that, for instance, for Donald Trump, who can only appeal to an audience, play to an audience, is if you were to remove the audience from Donald Trump and he was just making zingers or one-liners, but nobody was clapping or cheering, the absence of those cheers would make his statements way more awkward. There's a reason why you have a studio audience or fake applause in sitcoms, because when people laugh and clap, you want to laugh and clap. Please, next time somebody calls something you're doing or saying very human, you're experiencing a very human emotion right now, just ask them to call you functionally remedial. That's what it is. Okay.
Interesting is like this person who, has one set of ideas, debates this person who's like largely in their wheelhouse of those things. To me, that's way more interesting at an intellectual level. I guess it's like not interesting from an entertainment perspective. We could even think here of the Slavoj Žižek and Jordan Peterson debate. I've watched so many, debates or conversations over the years with Slavoj Žižek and guest. And if it's Slavoj Žižek and, psychoanalytic or Marxist thinker that disagrees with him, those can be really interesting conversations, because then you have two people that force each other to better articulate the differences of their positions. Or you see Žižek and whoever, clearly articulate why the unconscious is actually this, or why materialism is actually that. Nothing was more boring than the Žižek and Jordan Peterson debate, because there was no real dialogue or pushing towards ideas together. So I just wonder, would like a good intellectually grounded debate even be entertaining? Would it be something people even want to watch?
Well, but then then do better. Don't blame me for that, right? Like I'm the one that goes into these conversations, and I guess maybe I wouldn't expect him to be familiar with literally any of my background, but I'm the one that goes into these conversations like, fuck, why did I study for this? Or like, oh my God, what a waste of time, all the research for this. Like, holy shit. Like, be better. Make your side be better then.
I think it can be, right? But I think that okay, that's a good way to put this. I think that you have a version of debate that exists now where the act of debating is the entertaining hook. The thing that people click into is that they are doing a debate. I think that you could have entertaining debate by having the hook be the topic, right? And the depth of the topic becomes entertaining. The connection between the topic and the stuff becomes interesting. And that's fun. But if the act of debating is the main thing, then all that's happening is the performance of...
See, and then this is because these guys just don't have any experience in this field. Topics don't make for interesting debates. charismatic people make for interesting debates. You can take the most entertaining topic in the world and have somebody go to sleep in 3 minutes because the people speaking about it are boring. It sounds mean to say, but like it's true. Like there's an art to presenting a topic that's more important than the topic itself. Almost always so. That's why you have a lot of people in high school or in college who will say something like, I never would have imagined I would have enjoyed Russian literature, but then I had this one professor who was like so into it or whatever. Like there's a lot of people that will be introduced to a topic and the topic is fucking boring, but then they have the right teacher, the right professor, the right inspiration. Like, oh my God, this guy made this way more entertaining than not. And that can probably, my guess is that could be done with any topic ever. That can be done with probably literally any topic. Any topic can be made into a fucking snooze fest, and any topic can be made incredibly captivating. You just need the right person to present it. The presentation is really important. At the end of the day, we're all humans. We're not robots. You don't, insert fucking code into our brains and then print out, statements. You have to present it in a way that's like engaging and captivating to us. And those need emotional hooks.
The debate as qual performance, right? That's the only thing that becomes important. And then the idea of intellectual rigor becomes very secondary, right? I mean, you can see this with Destiny and that Norm Finkelstein. There's that Norm Finkelstein clip with Destiny where Norm Finkelstein.
The clip. There's the clip. Like you're doing it. The clip. And he's the one bringing this example up unprompted, by the way. He's bringing this example up unprompted. No, like he's just
secondary, right? I mean, you can see this with Destiny and that Norm Finkelstein. There's that Norm Finkelstein clip with Destiny where Norm Finkelstein is like, effectively, I forget the exact wording, but he's just like, you are in a room with 3 people who have been studying this conflict for decades, and you read Wikipedia. Like, what are we doing here?
Like, okay, yeah. Fuck. Now, the guy's right. I wish I would have watched this, because his statements were more egregious even than the first guy's. I think just what he said so far is more egregious than what the first guy was saying, but maybe the whole rest of this will just be having nothing to do with me. Oh.
Right? And that's sort of the vibe with a lot of the Destiny stuff, even some of the Hasan stuff. I think Hasan...
With a lot of the Destiny stuff. Oh, but only some. Okay, but at least he critiques Hasan a little bit. Some of the Hasan stuff.
Does a little bit of a better job prepping and so much shit, but he gets stuff wrong all the time.
Oh, but Hasan does a better job. Okay. With what topic? Like...
Sort of the vibe with a lot of the Destiny stuff, even some of the Hasan stuff. I think Hasan does a little bit of a better job prepping and so much shit, but he gets stuff wrong all the time. Peterson, obviously, like all
he does say he gets stuff wrong all the time, at least. Okay.
These guys, Ethan Klein, etc. They all sort of, and I don't think we necessarily, like, I don't think it's necessarily bad. Like, whatever, watch a TV show, man. Like, I watched a fucking soccer anime 24/7. Like, do whatever you want. That's totally cool. But the audience, there's this conflation, I think, because debate is supposed to be a smart people thing. Mm-hmm. That when these people have this debate, they're engaging intellectually in a rigorous and compelling way. But that's not actually true when you look at the merits of the stuff, right? I mean, like the Zizek Peterson debate is such a good example. It's basically Peterson misexplaining stuff from Marx or Zizek, and then Zizek re-explaining it in a weird Zizek way, and then going on to the next thing.
Which is so funny because that's what Benny Morris and Finkelstein was. It was Finkelstein taking a single sentence, a single quote, and then Benny Morris re-explaining and recontextualizing it, and then moving on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm. That's not really a particularly useful approach, right? Like, there is a degree of necessary analytic work and intellectual rigor that to make these debates, intellectually meaningful, as opposed to what they end up being, which is like basically weird reality TV shows about like the strangest people on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, something kind of related to what you said. I think I struggle with sometimes, and this is relevant to the Finkelstein example. There are times where like I am more drawn to debates featuring people with serious backgrounds in the subject being debated. I recognize maybe the risk of that is falling into a sort of elitism, or of course, and we all know this, like institutions themselves can reduplicate and reinforce, ideological beliefs that are not good and can just get parroted by academics or experts. But then at the same time, when it comes to like Destiny or whoever, there's people who I'm just kind of like, man, I just don't know if I want to. I'm between the two minds of like, I struggle to take you as seriously because I know that you do not have a background in this thing. At the same time,
that's such a weird like elitist. I guess he's being honest about it, like falling into the not being an elitist fuck.
Not have a background in this thing. At the same time, then, but isn't it more egalitarian to, leave space for non-experts? I know that's a very reductive way to put it, but
wouldn't it be crazy if we just analyzed what was being said on substance, and then if somebody proves themselves to be a dipshit, then you could ignore what they say in the future if you want? Like,
and other people maybe have that feeling as well.
I think that's fair. I think here's the thing. People use rhetorical terms like appeal to authority or whatever in a way that is very silly.
Kind of like when he was saying that I ad hominem into him because I said that he was engaging in bad faith after giving what I thought was evidence of him being in bad faith, and my whole critique of him was how he was engaging with my content. But okay.
Right. For instance, in this case, right, like the point's not that Destiny couldn't possibly know more about a thing than a professor of the thing. The point is that he doesn't. Right?
Yeah.
It's not.
But we didn't demonstrate that because he appealed to his authority constantly to avoid having to make an argument. That's the whole point, right? Like, you gave an example of the guy doing an appeal to authority fallacy, and now you're saying that it wasn't fallacious? Like, the example that he gave was a fallacious appeal to authority.
Not a question of the authority imbued by the position or by institutional recognition. It's engaging with the material things that they are saying, comparing them to actual scholarship and evidence.
Oh, is he about to do that?
Right, like that's the value, right? And that's what you have to do, right? To be egalitarian about it doesn't just mean anyone can say anything. It means that you don't assume that a guy with institutional recognition is correct per se because of that institutional recognition.
But that's all Finkelstein did, and you gave that example earlier of him doing that.
Social position or whatever. Like, you have to account for the power dynamic that's at play, but you also have to do rigorous critical analysis. Like, you can't, like, if someone were to be like, Lux, we'll pay you $10,000 to go on the news and debate this stock market guy about the future of IBM prices, like, you'd have no, like, it's not, the reason you would listen to him, not me, is not because they are an IBM representative. It's because I don't know jack shit about the stock market.
Well,
right?
And you can even imagine, right, in that example, a world where you, as a smart person that's good at using computer, could spend a couple days, learn a lot of facts about what's currently happening. What you couldn't do and what you couldn't learn in like an Adderall-fueled research session is how those...
Is that a hit against me? I can't even tell. The stimulant fucking characterizations are hilarious. Especially given that these guys will like fucking... I shouldn't ascribe to them. Maybe they're not like woke tards. They get mad when you make jokes about people on SSRIs or suicidal people, but...
Happening. What you couldn't do and what you couldn't learn in like an Adderall-fueled research session is how those markets work and function in the way that someone who studied those things for years could, or the underlying, epistemological assumptions of the field itself. There's no shortcut for that.
Yeah, like... That's exactly it, right? Like, maybe that was an example, whatever. But like, the question isn't pre-earmarked authority. It's legitimate. It's legitimately earned intellectual recognition or intellectual clarity, right? And I think there's this conflation, and I know this happens. Lord, I've seen this happen in the Wisecrack Discord and a million other Discords all the time, where I'll just be like, "This guy's dumb. Sorry, don't care." What's he got to say? People are like, "Well, why not?" And it's because like, read the shit that he says. Doesn't make any fucking sense or whatever, right? Like, no one is obligated to assume every position someone takes is good or bad. Like, you just interrogate it, and like, you can draw these conclusions. If, to use Destiny's example, if, for instance, Destiny's analysis of power were historically grounded in a way that isn't contrary to the vast majority of contemporary scholarship, I wouldn't say that he's wrong about shit. But like, it often is.
Name one example. What is my analysis of power? Like, what's an example of this?
And that's sort of, this is true for a lot of these guys, right? Like, this is just generally true that like, to be well informed.
Also, he brought me up again as an example, like
about something as complicated as like even the history of Welsh bards, right? Like, I know a little bit about that, but like, if I were to talk to an actual scholar, they've been studying it for decades, right? Like, they've read the primary source material, they know what's going on, and so there might be bad scholars, right? Like that lady who wrote the Qing Dynasty book that ended up being all lies. Like, I could probably be the more intellectually viable person in a debate about the Qing Dynasty because she just made all her shit up. But like, so she doesn't get institutional authority for that. But an actual scholar who knew the shit that she was talking about would turn my ass inside out in that discussion because I only know a little bit about the Qing Dynasty.
Well, there's something that came up in chat from our friend Alex Butler, who said, could a lot of this be very reductively described as non-experts speaking authoritatively in a way they might not even realize is in bad faith?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
that's the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? That's what that's called. The like, when you know just enough about a thing to think you understand it and not understand all the amounts of it that you don't know, right? When you know enough about a thing to think you understand it, but not enough to understand the parts that you don't understand. I think that's the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't remember if that's correct. I get it confused with the Hudsucker proxy a lot of the time. But yeah,
and this is like
absolutely correct. I don't necessarily think Destiny. There are things Destiny does make me like iffy about him as a guy.
Oh, cool. I'm brought up again. Okay. Okay.
But yeah, and this is like absolutely correct. I don't necessarily think Destiny. There are things Destiny does make me like iffy about him as a guy, but I don't think the way that he debates makes me think he's a bad person. I just think that he's like doing a silly thing, and he's doing it in a silly way, and there's not an infrastructure or
okay, not a bad person. That's good. I just do it a silly thing in a silly way. Okay.
Or a socially framed methodology to push back on it, really.
Well, and I also think, like, in that context too, if I am someone, for example, who's a famous streamer and I'm really interested in ideas, but I'm a non-expert, would I rather use my clout and connections to debate people, or would I want to use it to bring actual experts in those fields on, ask them questions, maybe push back at times, but use it as an opportunity to explore ideas? And I think that's the thing, right? Because it's not as good of a thumbnail to be like, famous streamer sits down with French philosopher Catherine Malibu to talk about neuroscience and Kant. But to me, that would exhibit a much higher level of curiosity and
You're just wrong. There's like different people excel at different things, and there's nothing wrong with pursuing the particular thing that you excel at. Some people might do really good interviews. Some people might enjoy broadcasting interviews to people because that's the thing that they excel at, that's the thing they enjoy. And the idea that you have to reserve particular types of engagement or political engagement with only like, well, if you're not like a PhD, blah, 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 then you absolutely should do it. Like, I've brought on like academics and chatted with them. I literally do this. Like, but I also debate as well. Like, it's such a weird gatekeepy way to approach it.
Interest in ideas. Than someone who can only conceive of exploring ideas in an adversarial way.
This is also such a weird, I'm not giving any charitability to this. This idea that, first of all, the idea that debate is a way to explore truth, nobody sincerely believes this. Debate is two people hashing out an idea. You're not like, you don't go to a debate to figure out the truth. Nobody believes this. This is stupid. This is like the weirdest strawman version of like what's happening. And it's only taking, again, like one aspect. It's the whole process prior to the debate. I'm a streamer. I stream all my shit that would lead up to this is probably the research and intellectually curious parts that you'd be talking about.
Than someone who can only conceive of exploring ideas in an adversarial way. And to be, I'm going to say something, guys, it's been a few episodes since we had to put on the unconscious toxic masculinity alarm. So, we can insert that sound effect right now. But a lot of this too, I just think of, and again, I'm being toxic here, is that it's just like, maybe dudes who like didn't do sports when they were younger, who wish that they could, who has 40-year-olds with...
Bro, like, what are we talking about right now? Like, this guy looks like a dude who was waving at the Allies when they were freeing people from the fucking concentration camps. And you're talking about like come on, Mr. Like, what are we talking about right now? I'm sorry. We didn't all have the same fucking powerlifting background like that you had. Like, get out of here. Seriously? What?
Money feel like they can now win and be tough.
I think there's definitely a chunk of that. I think there's also, I think that's definitely part of it. I not like couldn't.
Oh, that's definitely part. And he agrees with it? God, this guy said so much more shit. It was worse. Fuck, it was worse than the section I watched. I wish I'd just watched the last part here. Oh, so you think it's a masculine insecurity part? That's why people do debates, I guess. Oh, okay.
Do sports?
What an unbelievably fucking weird analysis there. Like, but okay. He should have just went with the more scathing one. I kind of think it's a lot of gayness that like getting, in the ring with a man and screaming at him and getting emotional and your bodies are all oiled up and you're just like moaning each other's name. Like, why not go with that one instead? Like, just go fucking full send, bro. Like, don't do go full send.
I think there's definitely a chunk of that. I think there's also, I think that's definitely part of it. I not like couldn't do sports, but that there's like a claim to power in a certain way.
Yeah.
Who wants to tag in?
More beyond sports, it's just like wanting that high school sense of popularity. Everybody wants to be living in Riverdale.
Yeah.
Genuine question. How did you know he was going to do this? You called it before watching and I wasn't sure. Well, there's two ways. One is because everybody does this, so it's just an easy gimme. So you can always guess that people are going to shit on me and be wrong. But the second is that if his characterization of me in his mind would have been completely and totally different than the characterization his co-host had given earlier, I think he said this in the debate, he wouldn't have said, oh, maybe I said that. Oh, maybe I said that. Oh, maybe I said that. Yeah, I probably said that. Oh, maybe I said that. Oh, blah, blah, blah. The reason why he's saying is because his actual thoughts were probably mirroring the earlier thoughts. That's why I'm saying, well, it seems like you co-signed his opinion, even though he wasn't either of these people here, but it's because he did believe all those things. And he basically goes on to say as much in the video. That's probably why it was hard for him to, when I was saying like, oh, well, didn't you say this then? He's like, maybe I did say that. And then at the end, he tried to say like, oh my God, you watched the wrong guy. I didn't say anything remotely. But it was because every other thing he said was like pretty close to that. They were all like dancing around the same topics, basically.
And again, not to break everything down to that, but we can all be slightly psychoanalytic here and acknowledge that people are driven by desires. Some we acknowledge, some that we don't acknowledge, some that we're not consciously aware of. And of course, I think especially with men on the internet, we do see a lot of reduplication or repetition of a certain type of masculine performativity.
Yeah, which
is fun.
It's like someone in the chat, I think, it's already scrolled up too far for me to know who they were, sorry. But they made a claim that was like, look, you can say Destiny's wrong about masculine literature, but like, where's the specific points? And that's a totally fair point because it should, like...
Somebody brings it up. That's a fair point. Okay, wait, what is the response here? Are you going to bring up a particular Destiny point? Oh, shit, okay. Oh, this person is in chat, repping me. He's entertaining and growing, and he actually studies topics he cares about by having people on and learning from primary sources. Not a bad example, in my opinion. Oh, shit. Okay, hold on. Here we go. They made
a claim that was like, look, you can say Destiny's wrong about masculine literature, but like, where's the specific points? And that's a totally fair point because it should, like, speaking generalities is like the kind of intellectual failure about which I'm talking. So to that point, right, like, Destiny's a good example of this because...
Okay, here it comes. Thank God. We made it. It's an hour, 30 minutes, 40 seconds. We're finally about to get a concrete example. Oh, I'm so fucking hyped. Oh my God, finally. That's an example is because, and now he's going to give the things that I'm concretely incorrect about. I'm finally going to get a good criticism from these videos that I've never had in my entire life before. I'm going to make a new note on my Obsidian. We're going to do some reading of research for my Wik debate. God, I'm so fucking excited. Predict what he's about to say. He's going to say, because Destiny doesn't do any reading at all and just reads Wikipedia. That's what he's probably going to say. Let's see.
Destiny claims to support sort of socialist.
Oh, never mind. He's going to do this incongruency of positions again. He claims to support the social values or whatever, but he donates to the police. So it's more dumb and more boring.
Or individual liberation from the economic level, but also things like cops are good and the Democratic Party is a functioning liberal entity, right?
That wasn't even close to what this chatter was bringing up. This is a failure of imagination for you to understand that people can have different core values that mean that they'll align with you with some applied positions, but not all of them, which is incredibly fucking stupid. I don't know how the fuck you can I don't know how you can know what a first principle is and what a second, third order belief is and not know that different core principles could lead you to some similar areas and some dissimilar areas. I don't know how it's possible. Go back, you said you were a socialist, I think. Well, yeah, but he didn't mean socialist. But
even though materially on the ground, those things are opposed to each other. But there's no one on the streams who is going to point this out, right? Who's going to poke at this.
I've literally debated Michael Alberto, who is the founder, creator, author of the book for Participatory Economics, which is a socialist system. I literally debated Richard Wolff, who is supposed to be one of the more popular, whatever fucking loser social people. I literally debated, who was the other guy to the Sam Cedar shit? Michael Brooks. Oh, that was a god awful fucking conversation. Like, what do you mean there's nobody who will push back? That's the whole point of debate, is finding people that will push back. Or maybe he means nobody in my audience will push back on this. Like, Michael Alberto was a Griper kid, was he? Oh shit, was he? Wait, what was the name of the participatory economics guy? Hold on, participatory economics. You're right. I think Michael Alberto is the Griper guy. Oh, Michael Albert. Sorry, Michael Albert, not Michael Alberto.
One on the streams who is going to point this out, right? Who's going to poke at this, unless it's like a Hasan type guy who has his own series of crazy assumptions about how stuff works, right?
Yeah,
so,
and people in the chat, I see people bring up like the propagandist thing, but for those of you who are just showing up, earlier in the stream, we did watch or listen to a big chunk from Hasan Piker's interview on the Wired podcast, and in it, he straight up says like he 100% takes advantage of debate culture and clickiness to draw people in to hopefully then turn it into a discussion of bigger ideas. So all that to say is I think there's a fairness there.
Also, like, what does propagandist mean? Like, obviously, everyone who's like articulating a social or political position is going to articulate their social or political position, right? Like, who cares if someone says they're a propagandist? It's all fucking propaganda. Like,
I hate this thing. All politics is remember, if everything is a thing, then nothing is a thing, right? Like, the whole point of creating a definition for something is to exclude other things from it. It doesn't make any sense to say everything is a particular. It's fucking dumb.
That's the thing that's bad about propaganda in theory, right? Is when
never mind. Okay, at least he'll do this. The bad thing about propaganda in theory is usually the implication that you're lying or you're misrepresenting something.
It's an intentional occlusion of fact or occlusion of position or occlusion of articulation.
Okay, that's good at least.
And that's like hidden and hidden away, right? As opposed to explicit, right? That's the propagandistic problem. But it's also not actually, like, propaganda is not a value judgment. Like, it's just a kind of thing.
I agree. It's not necessarily value judgment, but it's used that way. Like, there's huge loading to the word propaganda. People instantly have very, very negative assumptions of it when you say that.
Perfect category, yeah. Okay, so I want to wind down here. I don't think we've solved it all today, guys. I don't think we fixed the whole thing. I guess maybe the final thing for us to quickly hit, maybe I'll start with Henry here, is do we think that formal debate has a useful role in online discourse, especially in online discourse around ideas and politics? Henry, what do you think?
That word formal is doing a lot of work there as far as like the means by which it's like platformed, processed, and presented. Is there like a moderator or referee? I do think like if you're engaging in like programs that do like good faith debate on topics of interest that are more about furthering knowledge and furthering the research, yeah, that's cool. That's helpful. I'm always open. Like, I'm not going to say no, don't do it. If it happens online, it'll be like now where I just don't listen to it if it's annoying.
Yeah, Lux, what do you think?
I think it's fine. Like, do the shit you think is fun. I think it has I think it has a value in terms of theoretically, right? A well-done debate has the value of forcing people to articulate positions in response to pushback, which I think is a good thing. The problem is this idea that it's a way to settle or solve or like prove a position abstracted from the performative element of it, right? Like that's the part that is a problem. I think having debates about stuff is probably good. It's useful to push ideas against each other. That's cool. The problem is when people treat them as either finding an answer or in and of themselves, like intellectually rigorous by default.
I'd probably agree with this.
Right. I think there has to be a degree of audience-based critical thinking about the quality of the arguments that are being made and about the sort of thing. And I think that you sort of can never conceptualize the gestalt of an issue into a particular into a particular debate. But I think they're good to do. They seem fine.
Yeah, I'll give my quick final take. Yeah, which my very simple take on this is debates can be good. A couple things though. We as an audience need to understand what's really going on. We need to be honest with ourselves about, am I watching a debate that's solely here for entertainment in kind of a kayfabe way? If you acknowledge that, great. The other important thing is that the people doing the debate know what they're doing and if they're honest about what they're doing. If that is the case, then great. This gets bad when people, performing these debates are dishonest with themselves and their audience, and when an audience is potentially ignorant or dishonest with themselves about what those things are doing. And I also think that for all of us, we just got to ask, what are the underlying principles motivating this person? But we didn't fix it all day. But guys, I want to thank Michael Luxembourg so much for taking time out of his busy day, and I mean that. He does a lot of stuff for coming on and talking about this. Please do follow Lux on Twitter and everything else. And if you are in Austin, Texas, find him.
Also, I have 20 more minutes. So I got out of the meeting if you want me to stick around. I can also leave. I got nothing else to do for the next 20 minutes.
I think I'm going to kick you out for now. Just going to try out this new format thing today.
Test
my phone. So give Lux some love in the chat as I test out a new format to make this stream appropriate to be ripped for Spotify. But thank you so much, Lux. I'll never debate you because I would lose.
Well, maybe. I'm very rusty. But friends, I will talk to you guys soon. And yeah, if you want to see something cool, come see Fight Opera presents a good old-fashioned train robbery at Austin Beer Works on June 22nd.
June 22nd, Austin Beer Works.
All right, later, folks.
Awesome, guys. So hey, if you're just tuning in, this is Wisecrack Live. We just finished up talking about debate with our friend Michael Luxembourg. I don't think we solved it all, guys, but we really tried. We always want to hear your thoughts, so you can leave a comment if you're watching this after the fact. There's a Q&A function over on Spotify. There's a chat if you're here right now, and you can always hit us up at wisecracklive666@gmail.com. We're now going to do a new part of the show, which is our advice segment. We started it last week. We're going to do it again this week. There still is time to get something in. Don't do it in chat because we'll miss it. That's the reality of the situation. But there's a couple questions that came through on Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter at Wisecrack, and some stuff that came through in email. Our email, of course, is what is it again? wisecracklive666@gmail.com. So I'm gonna start going through the emails right now.
What we got?
I'm just gonna do first names, by the way, but I'll say this in the future. If you don't want your name said at all, specify that in the email. And chat, you're a part of this too, so you can always jump in and do advice. So Brian says, long-time listener, first-time emailer. My question is, what key ideas do you want to impart on your child and future children? I ask because I've struggled with this a lot, 10-year-old and 5-year-old. You want them to be kind, considerate, and empathetic, but you also want them to be strong and willful. You want them to be smart and healthy. You want them to have drive and still remain calm and cool and on it goes. That's without encountering traumatic events. So many thoughts. I know there's some parents in the chat, so curious what you all think. I'm a very new parent. I will say that when I think about my daughter, I think like kindness, empathy, and curiosity are really big for me. I want her to just be nice to people, I want her to be someone who's good to be around and who approaches people with a kind and loving energy. I want her to be empathetic. I would love her to be the sort of person where if she's in a school setting and she sees someone else having a hard time, she cares about it and wants to help out. And I want her to be curious, meaning I want her to be curious about different ideas, different types of art. And I would love her to be curious about people she doesn't understand. People aren't like her. I'd rather, her have an attitude of curiosity and not judgment, at least in an outright sense. The other thing though, we still have the toxic alarm. There's that part of me where it's like, oh, but I also want her to stick up for herself. I also want her to pick up a rock and use it to take out her enemies. So, but I don't know, I guess those are the big ones. It's hard, I think it's hard because the world is really tough. And I think sometimes there's maybe what we want for our kids is maybe what we want in the ideal world, but then the world we live in sucks sometimes. So then it's hard to then think, what would we want?
Now listen, I'm not saying this is just a cheap shot. Not everybody's perfect, but lots of empathy, kindness, and caring here when he's liking cuck tweets about me, but very nice. But we're not all perfect. I fuck up too.
In the world that we actually live in. Eddie brings up resilience. We have confidence. Our friend Callie says confident in their self-worth, but not narcissistic. That's a huge one. Yeah, I think how can you have a kid that's confident but not narcissistic? I hate narcissism, but that's like the best that I think we can do.
You mentioned something comes up in this Q&A stuff. Does it? Does it matter?
A couple emails that are not for the advice thing. Just going through. This one's more of a personal one, so I'm not going to do that. From Croatia, so shouts to Croatia. She commented that traditional timestamps 131. Let's see if I can get it.
Have it on screen now.
Cool. Okay. So I think she said 131.54. We're basically there.
But okay, on the possibility of religious innovation. Is there such a thing, or is it always hidden source? Maybe a question of historiography. I think
don't always think generation
does religious innovation. Simply tradition. But so did you?
The people doing trad stuff now are doing something. Was that check? I have a question. So Eddie brought up being, again, we don't know who this is. You make assumptions, but we're not doxing people. Eddie's sick of their life as a tenured professor. Feel like I arrived 20 years too late to the party without getting into too much detail. The situation in my school isn't getting better. I like the teaching, but the administrative bullshit is soul crushing. I need some advice. One, the work have business or consulting backgrounds that are inflation about baby mama. My job was also unmedicated. But so for me, the decision to get you're into doesn't make sense. Do it. I want short books. Sam, I watch.
Okay.
Different, right?
I thought he said there was a question about
guys,
me, but...
Northeast Pennsylvania. Having a debate with Destiny. I don't.
Oh wait, I don't hear my name.
I think that a thing you don't see enough in debates is people asking questions. And I think maybe something you could do, and I know it might be tough with Destiny because he's an aggressive lad. I don't know, like in the clip we saw before where he's defending debates to Hasan, or against Hasan, you know, he references like colonial America and stuff. I don't hear him referencing how online debate is having a determinate positive effect in contemporary American politics. So that's what I'd be interested in hearing, right? Like, do we think that Twitch and YouTube debaters are affecting election outcomes? Are these people campaigning? Are they pushing for local initiatives? Are they joining political organizations? I don't know, but I do think that's something that we could have some evidence of, right? Like there's, I don't know.
Wouldn't that be crazy?
I also think that, I mean, in a sense too, with the sophistry thing, I mean, pull from history, man. Like, man, I don't know what your gender is, I'm sorry, just, yeah, but I said it in a sort of open way. I mean, get into sophistry. I don't know if this is stuff Destiny thinks about, but like, how is what Destiny does and a lot of those other people, how is it not sophistry? You know? How is there a pursuit of wisdom or truth going on? Also, if these people care about politics so much, what are they doing politically? If your whole thing is you think debate's going to change society in the world, what are you doing? I don't know. These people be doing everything. So if you're in the chat being like, I don't know. But then ask that.
Hold on. Actually, unironically, hold on. So I'm ass mad because of the beginning of the conversation. But like, if the whole conversation was like this, I actually wouldn't really care that much. That'd be fine. That would be totally fine. Because he might not know. I don't expect him to know my show. But he's like, oh, you know, do these guys ever think about like what are they doing to people? Like, I don't know, maybe they do. But I'm actually 1,000,000,000% okay with that whole last like 20 seconds. If the whole conversation was like that, oh, sure, that's fair. Yeah, I wouldn't expect him to know. 100%.
Good luck. I wouldn't do it. You know, got better stuff to do. And I just don't like the energy of debates. But I appreciate you. Let us know how it goes. Send us the link when it happens. There's a couple questions here that I think, let's see. Okay, I'm gonna say a quick thing. So Kate asked a quick question, and it's about the School of Life, which does philosophy stuff. I'm gonna be pretty quick here, Kate. It kind of sucks. This is Wisecrack Live for Wednesday, May 22nd. There's a couple.
Okay.